ceremonial function that, while a lot of labor can help uplift people and be good, and you looked at that as some kind of cross to bear, like you were being put upon, and how, woe is me, this is so terrible. Like, give me a break. Right now, there are about 35 million Canadians who would love to trade places with her for 4 years. Yeah. So that there alone tells me, take it away from her. And I don't care what the precedent is on this one. This is an unprecedented case, and it deserves an unprecedented reaction.
We're going to stop here. The former Governor General has been to space, but has Erin O'Toole failed on the launch pad? We'll talk about that next. It's your Political Fix. Rob Snow Show, City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once, you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once, you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10, 15 minutes just to give her that reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that's sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy, the bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have special camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
Part 2.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Of your Political Fix, Jason Leader is the president of Enterprise Canada. Cam Holmstrom is a consultant with Blue Sky Strategy. So I have the latest polling data. It's from the Angus Reid Institute. Federal politics, Liberals hold lead in vote intention. Unfavorable views of CPC leader intensify. So talking about Erin O'Toole, this is what it says. New public opinion data from the nonprofit Angus Reid Institute finds nearly half, 47% in this country, have an unfavorable view of Erin O'Toole, a 16-point increase. Since last September, when fewer than 1/3, 31% felt the same. 1 in 5 remain unsure about him. And like the top line number right now is Liberals 35, Conservatives 30, NDP 20. That's kind of where we are in popular support. But what do you think is going on, Jason Leader, with the unfavorables for O'Toole, the so-called negatives, the 16-point increase since September? What do you think could be behind that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a great question. It's been hard to punch through on anything positive for anybody, I would say, in these last little bit. And I would say that Mr. O'Toole had a pretty good first couple of months as leader, and then a couple of just controversies around his group. The Derek Sloan stuff. There's a little bit of recency bias on this, and it sort of attaches itself to you. And I will say as well, just in general, what happened in the United States over the last 2 months, I think infects and continues to infect, conservative parties, and certainly our Conservative Party federally. And so I think, this is a challenge that needs to be, overcome. And I think, there's a mixture there of recommendations, which are focus on the things that you can do some help on, get a little bit better known, because the truth is Erin O'Toole is a caricature to most Canadians right now, and most people have never even seen a picture of him or have heard him speak. And third, you do have to be very clear about distancing yourself from some of the crazy malarkey that's going on down south. But the only elixir for this is to be better known, because when you're a suburban dad who's a veteran, you shouldn't have those kinds of negatives, so they've got to sort of pull up their socks.
Yeah, a few kind of internal things, right? You had the Derek Sloan thing, and hopefully they've I think they've finally taken care of that. Maybe waited too long, and then the League of the Residential Schools thing to a crowd of young rabid conservatives certainly did not help. So. Just a couple of things, maybe, that I can think of.
Yeah, but, every new leader has a couple of missteps. Yeah, in my experience, yeah. I actually think he's done probably 10 to 12 things that I've looked and said, "Oh man, that's a really smart idea," that no one's ever seen. And so I really do like him. I really do like his team, and I like his persona and personality. And I think most Canadians will definitely think when they look at him that he's a hell of a lot better than Mr. Scheer, for example. But most Canadians, honestly, he's a rumor to most Canadians right now. And what they've heard has been little snippets of not positive stuff.
Right.
So
okay.
Turn that around.
Okay. What do you think, Cam? Negative impressions up 16 points.
To me, I'm not as surprised, mostly because this was his dilemma when he decided to get into this race to begin with. He made a very conscious choice that after 2017, he obviously clearly felt that he could not be elected as Conservative leader today without taking a harder turn to the right. Because even what I've known of him personally, and people I know who like him very personally, are really politically moderate, they say they didn't recognize this person who ran in that leadership race because it wasn't. He was trying to create a persona that was different. That was more that was more hardcore conservative.
True blue.
Yes, exactly. And this created a problem for him. When the race was over, because this is typical leadership races, you tend to move more towards the base and then more towards the center after you win. The problem was that which person were you going to get on the other side, and how was that going to look to people, and what were people going to take from it? I think that's part of the problem, is that he did not have the confidence to run as who he is truly and who he always was going to be. And that created this situation where now he's having to make choices. You mentioned the Sloan one as a good example. There were many points along the way where Derek Sloan could have been booted from that caucus. And the fact that it took a donation from a neo-Nazi to do it, it's like that's an extremely low bar, but there were a lot of other places along the way where he could have done exactly what he did, but he didn't, because he was still trying to strike that balance. He was still trying to move that. And I think, to Jason's point, I think that's what, when you saw what happened in the States, changed the calculus, because all of a sudden things had gone way too far in the States, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we need to lower this to lower the temperature, and that made the push. But really, at the end of the day, this is what he created for himself. The image that's out there is the one that he put out there. And to me, the irony of it is that he's at that point without a single attack ad being done against him, without any real effort from the opposition parties, short of a few press releases, to actually paint him as that. He painted himself as that. The other thing I would throw out there, though, is that one thing he could be doing in this moment that he's not doing is really being more propositional in opposition than oppositional. I've been just the question period this week going at it about Keystone, going about vaccines. It's an attack about the problem, which is fair. but offering no actual solution as to what he would do differently.
Okay.
I think people's minds are very open to that right now. Like right now, people are exasperated. We're tired. We're open to ideas as to how to get this done and make it work. And if you don't have any of that to offer, you're missing a golden moment, which I think plays into that too.
Okay. Look, we only have a minute left, so here I just a quick short answer. We'll talk about the NDP some other time. Battleground Ontario, it'll probably come down if and when there's an election. Let's face it, 905-416. It always comes down to that. Where Doug Ford is right now in his political life, is he a benefit or a hindrance to his federal friends? Quick answer, Jason. What do you think?
Huge benefit. Doug Ford's going to win the 905 next time. He's a huge benefit right now.
Okay.
Tough down, then at heights he could never sustain, but he's in a very good position right now politically vis-a-vis Ms. Horvath and Mr. Del Duca.
20 seconds or less, Cam Holmstrom.
I think
Help or hurt?
Honestly, today I would say he's neutral. I think going forward, it can only get worse. Because he's starting to revert to his old self, the old self that had him tanking in the polls and had him very unpopular. And honestly, as this crisis gets worse, unless Doug really does kind of revert back to the Doug Ford we saw this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Experience Winterlude across Canada. Watch the virtual show exploring Canada's winter traditions. Meet the carvers of Winterlude's first national ice carving competition. Vote online for your favorite sculpture. Celebrate Canada's artistic diversity with Fosia, Ariane Moffat, William Prince, Tracy Trash, Cornet, Ria May, and the incredible Eladj Balde. Join us February 5th at 7 p.m. This is Winterlude.
Each week on Grill This, Smoke That, Steph Legary showcases delicious recipes from across Canada, all done on the grill. Join Steph and his special guests on Grill This, Smoke That, Fridays on Rogers TV.
This is Rogers TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the meeting in 1 minute. On va commencer la réunion dans 1 minute. Merci. Thank you. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenue à notre première réunion du Conseil.
Welcome.
Welcome to the first City Council meeting for 2021. A few reminders for today's meeting, which is being held using Zoom. Members of council and staff, please stay on mute unless called upon to speak. Phone participants may use *6 to mute and unmute. Members of council that wish to speak to an item, please use the raise hand feature located at the bottom of the participants list in Zoom, and *9 for members on the phone. And this meeting will be broadcast on Rogers TV and the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel. Participants with their cameras on, please ensure that you're centered and close to the top of the frame as possible. It is now my great pleasure to welcome a number of distinguished individuals with us here today. Grand Chief Verna Paulson, the Algonquin Anishinaabe National Tribal Council. Grand Chief Lisa Robinson, Algonquin Nation Programs and Services Secretariat. Chief Wendy Jocko, the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation. And Chief Dylan White Duck, Kitigan Zibi Anishinaabe First Nation. And Elder Claudette Commanda. I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I'd like to honor the land and the peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia, and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. It
is important to recognize
honorer les terres et les peuples de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont les ancêtres ont vécu sur ce territoire durant
On a un problème.
et dont la culture et la présence ont enrichi et continué d'enrichir ces terres. It is now my great pleasure to invite a good friend, not just of me, but of many people around the city of Ottawa, Elder Claudette Commanda, to deliver an Indigenous blessing. Elder Claudette, thank you very, very much for being with us virtually. That's the next best thing, I suppose, to being in person, but it's a great honor to have you back here at City Hall once again. Thank you very much, Miigwech.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Watson, for the lovely introduction. So greetings to everyone who's here. I wish each and every one of you many blessings of good health, peace, safety, love, and goodwill during this new year. And may we all lift our hearts together to one another. And I want to say thank you again for the honor and the recognition of the Algonquin people. Chimiigwech. So kwe kakina, kwe. Greetings to you, Your Worship, and council members. Bijajikoma Anishinaabe ki o mama wenenewag. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à la territoire des ancêtres, du peuple nation algonquin, and welcome to all to this beautiful, unsurrendered homeland of the Algonquin people. Je vais faire une prière. Vous êtes toutes inclus dans cette bénédiction. I welcome everyone to this prayer that I will give. And let us bring our minds, our heart, and our spirit together in our voice. And let us acknowledge that great one, that great spirit who created us. And no matter what faith, what religion, what spirituality we believe in, there is one who has made all. So I welcome you to say your words of gratitude, to say your word of prayer in the way that you believe, in the way that you were raised. What is important is that the Creator hears each and every one of our prayers. The Creator knows our heart. He hears us. So let us hold in our hearts one another as we say this prayer. And also let us hold in our hearts everyone who needs us. They may be a stranger to us, but do know that everyone, even right now as we are gathered, there is someone out there that certainly needs a prayer. And let us remember the people that we serve. That is our responsibility, and only together in strength, kindness, and love we can help those that need us. So at this time I say, Miigwech, Kishiminado, Miigwech, Onje Nongom, Das pinigen kokomisag, das pinigen mishomsag. Miigwech gishimanado, kinakeego. Miigwech. Miigwech jojoiki. Kokomistapigizis mishomiskizis. Nibuk sendam gishimanado, nibuk sendam. Moshkawiziwin. Zagiedwin, minopamadswin onje kakina. Enabigis, widokushnang, kakina nongum. We thank you, Creator, for your blessing. We thank our Mother the Earth as we honor those first grandfathers and grandmothers. And we honor our grandfather sun and our grandmother moon as well. We thank you, Creator, for all of your creation, the water life, the medicine life, the trees, the animal, all that is above and all that is below. We thank you for the gift of life, and we thank you, Creator, for wisdom and love. Creator, my prayer for the people who are here today, the leaders, the citizens, guide their meeting, bless their words, bless them with good health, and may they embrace the 7 grandfathers, the teachings that were gifted to all humankind: love, wisdom, respect, courage, humility, honesty, and truth. And we thank you, Creator, for hearing our collective voice through this prayer. We thank you for hearing this prayer, and we thank you, Great Spirit, for your love for each and every one of us. Chi miigwech gishimanado. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. Oh, thank you. And may you have a good meeting. I wish you the very best, councillors, Mayor Watson. Keep up the good work, and know that only together in the spirit of love and kindness as brothers and sisters, we will get through this pandemic, and we will get through any other issue that is before us. And as I said earlier, and I will close with these words, love. Love is the most important, and only through love we honor that great responsibility the Creator has given us. In unity, with that one voice, one heart, and one determination. Kindness. Miigwech, thank you. Good luck with your meeting and enjoy your meeting.
Well, Elder Claudette, thank you very, very much. Once again, inspiring words to begin what we hope is going to be a much better year in 2021 than we had in 2020. So, Elder Claudette Commanda, thank you very much. For those who are able to, would you please rise for a moment of personal reflection? And as we rise, please think of Rabbi Bolka, who is battling cancer. As we all know, Rabbi Bolka is not just Ottawa's rabbi, he's Canada's rabbi, and he is with his family in New York. And we want everyone to pray for him and the challenges that he's going through, and other members of our community who have suffered a loss or dealing with the impact of COVID-19. Merci. Thank you. Merci. Roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Lula?
Je suis présent.
Councillor Dudas?
Present.
Councillor Harder?
Here.
Councillor Studs?
Here.
Councillor El-Shantiri?
Present.
Councillor Gower?
Ici.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Here.
Councillor Shirelli? Councillor Eglay?
Here.
Councillor Deans?
Here.
Councillor Tierney?
Présent.
Conseil Fleury?
Bonjour.
Councillor King?
Here.
Councillor McKenney?
Present.
Councillor Leeper?
Here.
Councillor Brockington?
Here.
Councillor Menard?
Present.
Conseil Cloutier,
Présent.
Councillor Kitts,
Ici.
Councillor DeRose,
Here.
Councillor Moffat,
Here.
Councillor Meehan,
Here.
Councillor Hubley,
Here.
Mayor Watson.
Ici.
Le quorum est atteint, Monsieur le Maire.
Merci. Well, I want to start by thanking again Elder Claudette Commanda for offering such a thoughtful prayer and blessing to
Your
guide us.
Worship, you missed me. There is a back connection.
Okay, Councillor Shirelli. Again, I want to thank Elder Claudette Commanda for offering such a thoughtful Algonquin prayer and blessing to guide us in our deliberations and decisions through the coming year. Miigwech, Claudette. Claudette's ancestors have been stewards of this land for over 6,000 years, and we should look to their steadfast commitment to protecting nature and our waterways as a guiding light in our decision-making. I very much value our relationship with our surrounding Algonquin communities, Pikwakanagan and Kitigan-Zibi, as well as all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit residents in the City of Ottawa. And I'm very pleased, as I mentioned earlier, that Grand Chiefs Verna Polson and Lisa Robinson and Chiefs Dylan White Duck and Wendy Jocko are able to join us virtually for today's meeting. We've had the honor of welcoming our Algonquin partners at City Hall in previous years, and I look forward to hosting them once again when it's safe to do so. This year, my state of address evolves around the theme of resilience and determination. Et en pensant à l'année
2020 will certainly be a year we will not forget.
We won't forget the hardship and the sacrifices and the loneliness, the loss of life and the anxiety we all went through here in Ottawa and around the world. But let's remind ourselves it was also a year where we were forced to slow down, spend more time with our family, rediscover our backyards and the natural beauty our city has to offer. In a sense, COVID helped us put things in perspective. We were suddenly reminded what exactly is important in life and brought out the best, and it brought out the best in many of our residents. Entrepreneurs across the city reinvented their businesses from one day to the next, many redirecting their manufacturing capacity to fighting COVID-19. I visited Alexandre Cloutier and his team at Innova Tools in Councillor Kitts' ward, who pivoted from a shop producing home construction equipment into an innovative business in rural Ottawa producing see-through face shields that are now being tested by the RCMP. North of 7 Distillery on Saint Laurent Boulevard quickly went from producing spirits to hand sanitizer. The micro distillery produced about 500 bottles of hand sanitizer a day, which was wonderful news for our frontline workers and those working in long-term care and retirement homes. Et je suis très impressionné par l'initiative de toutes.
I'm very impressed by the initiative of all of these local initiatives.
So many residents in our community as they came forward to help strangers make it through these difficult times. Following an urgent appeal from Dr. Anna Teresa Lobos at CHIO for PPE, or personal protective equipment, for frontline healthcare workers, Darcy Walsh from Edelman Canada reached out to a number of community players, including HP Canada's President and CEO Mary Ann Ewell. Working together, the team developed a made-in-Ontario innovative face shield that received approval from Health Canada. The Shielding Heroes campaign ended up raising over $400,000 to produce 75,000 face shields that were sent to hospitals throughout Eastern Ontario during a critical 3-month period. Others, like Khalid El Ghazar and his team at Conquer COVID-19, held critical PPE drives in the early days of the pandemic to ensure that frontline healthcare workers and our most vulnerable residents had access to masks. It's
also with work from residents such as Véronique Stoltmans, owner of a spa in Orleans. She axed all of her activities on community support.
Starting a Facebook support group for Orleans residents, she raised funds and worked with St. Hubert Restaurant to provide meals for medical staff at the Ottawa Hospital's General Campus, et aussi à l'Hôpital Montfort. It was residents mobilizing behind groups like Nepean Neighbors, who paired up volunteers with residents needing help getting groceries and medication, dog walking, and picking up pet supplies while they were in isolation for 2 weeks. And it was local chefs like Joe Thorntongull of Tali and Coconut Lagoon, who's one of his restaurants, in fact, burnt down during the COVID outbreak, Adam Vitterol of North and Navy, Tim Stock of Time and Again, and Patrick Garland of Absinthe, who provided meals to homeless residents and low-income families. And the pandemic went on. As the pandemic went on, food was in short order for many families. Some went above and beyond to support the Ottawa Food Bank, which is still helping more households than ever. In early April, I had a conversation about the pressing needs in food supply with Harley Finkelstein from Shopify and Michael Maidman, then of the Ottawa Food Bank. We decided to share our chat on Twitter, and Harley and his wife Lindsay generously committed to donating $1 for every tweet of our conversation, up to $10,000. That campaign went viral and helped us to raise over $300,000 in 48 hours to feed those hungry in our community. We received donations from all over the world, including from the hip-hop group Wu-Tang Clan, which only amplified the success of the campaign going forward.
I hope that we'll remember all of these acts when we'll think about 2020.
Beyond the generosity of our residents and businesses, our city team stepped up in a significant way to help our community during the pandemic. Under the impressive leadership of Dr. Vera Etches and Chair Keith Egline, Ottawa Public Health has been at the forefront of our fight against COVID since the very start of the pandemic. Over 10 months, her team at OPH has innovated and stayed on top of the science to provide sage guidance to residents, institutions, and business owners so everyone could do their part to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Un grand merci.
We would like to thank Dr. Etch and her team for everything they could to protect our community during this pandemic.
I also want to take the opportunity to thank the health professionals that have taken care of our elderly and sick residents since the beginning of the pandemic. All the doctors, nurses, personal support workers who have worked tirelessly and for countless hours in our hospitals and long-term care homes. I also want to recognize the many unsung heroes of the pandemic: bus drivers, bylaw officers, paramedics, police officers, firefighters, our staff in water services, the janitors and cleaners in essential buildings, and the clerks at grocery stores and drugstores. They all made sure that Ottawa's essential services were maintained while most of us were asked to stay at home. And in a show of solidarity with our healthcare and frontline workers, I've asked that the Ottawa 2017 cauldron in front of City Hall be lit up every night over the next 3 months. In partnership with Enbridge, which will pay for the gas, we will reignite this beautiful flame as a thank you to our essential workers and as a light at the end of the tunnel, providing hope and optimism for our community. Thanks to the guidance and leadership of Steve Kanalakis, our city manager, and his talented leadership team, the city responded quickly to the pandemic in support of our partners and our residents. We put in place the Human Needs Task Force to ensure that we could respond to the needs of our most vulnerable residents and the social services sector that support them, and I believe we did that very successfully.
We could respond to the needs to our most vulnerable resident.
In the days of the pandemic, we distributed over 400,000 disposable and cloth masks to residents who needed them. We provided our partner agencies with more than $82 million to deal with COVID-related costs increases, $57 million of which went to the safe reopening and operation of childcare and early on centers. The rest of these transfers, and we thank our partners of the federal and provincial government, include $16 million to 130 special or social services and housing partners towards PPE and additional cleaning, $800,000 for COVID renovations, and $5 million in support to other social service agencies, including $1.4 million specifically for those serving our Indigenous residents. Overall, our housing and social service partners received $183 million from the city in 2020, $101 million in COVID ongoing operational funding, and $82 million in COVID-specific funding. Working with our partners, we now have conducted over 7,000 wellness visits to residents who are isolated or more at risk, providing food baskets, masks, and mental health referrals along the way. We've opened 3 respite centers with access to bathrooms, showers, and other supports for residents in the shelter system, Tom Brown Arena, St. Paul's, et Bernard Grandmaître, and they now serve an average of 210 clients daily. Because of physical distancing rules and corresponding capacity restrictions, we have set up a number of physical distancing and isolation centers for our residents in the shelter system, with over 160 currently using these spaces. As cases continue to rise in our community, these centers are more important than ever, and that's why we will soon open a physical distancing center at the Ottawa Jail Hostel, close to the many wraparound services that these residents currently use and need. Over the next few weeks, the center will serve to isolate COVID-positive patients from the shelter system where there is a need. And after these first few weeks, the facility will help us address the overcrowding in the men's shelter system and will enable appropriate physical distancing while supporting our most at-risk residents through the colder winter months.
This initiative will also use the youth hostel during the pandemic.
Housing crisis in the face of COVID-19, our city staff and our 3 not-for-profit partner agencies responded enthusiastically this fall to the federal government's launch of a rapid housing initiative. Ottawa was allocated $32 million as part of this program, which will allow us to fund 4 projects and 109 supportive housing units, both in the core and the suburbs. As an example, this funding will allow the Shepherds of Good Hope to go forward with a 40-unit residence with a new kitchen and a drop-in program at 216 Murray Street, while Hope Living in Canada, their residents for people aged 55 plus will be able to add 8 new fully accessible rooms. This is, of course, in addition to the city's ongoing investment in affordable housing, and thanks to historic yearly investments of $15 million, the city will break ground on another 250 new supportive and affordable housing units in 2021. This brings the city's total investment in affordable housing and supportive housing to $47 million in 2021, which will allow us to deliver 359 units. And I would be remiss not to mention the federal government's announcement in September of its single largest investment in affordable housing, thanks to a mortgage of $160 million from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to Ottawa Community Housing. This historic financing announcement will enable Ottawa Community Housing to finally develop Gladstone Village and its 700 affordable housing units in Councillor McKenney's ward. I want to thank the federal government, Ministers Hussein, McKenna, and Fortier for their help with this project and their outstanding contributions to affordable housing in our city. Given these investments, the city has a pipeline of 1,282 units, which are at various stages of planning, development, and construction. But with the help of our partners, we're on track to deliver 694 new units during this term of council, which will be the largest number of affordable housing units ever built in the city's history.
We also know that the private sector has an important role in affordable housing and the maintenance in Ottawa for options.
Many of the new projects coming forward are along our existing and future LRT lines, which is exactly the kind of transit-oriented development we have been seeking from the industry. These projects help us achieve the kind of growth and density we want to see in existing neighborhoods while reducing the resilience of residents in cars. And to ensure transit remains affordable for our low-income residents, I'm proud that we, as a council, froze the cost of the Equipass and the Equifare and the Community Pass for the 3rd consecutive year as part of Budget 2021, which is an additional investment of $185,000 in affordable transit. This is all good news for the sustainable growth of our city, good news for the environment, and good news for future transit ridership. And it's in line with that important conversations that are taking place right now in our community and at Planning Committee on the new official plan, which will determine how our city will grow over the next 25 years. As part of that consultation and policy development process, we know that we will see more intensification in existing core neighborhoods and suburbs, creating 15-minute walkable communities that are supported by all the required amenities and services.
The O-Train and the transport activities that goes with it will help us to go with sustainable growth.
a surface parking lot and a 2-story building will make way for 2 towers that will soon connect 588 residential units directly into the Lyon Street station. Significant progress was also made on a 25-story building at the former Trailhead site on Scott Street, which will offer 279 rental units within steps of the future Westboro station. This year, construction will begin at 900 Albert, where 2 residential towers and a direct connection to the Bayview station platform will provide over 1,200 units, along with over 1,000 bike parking stalls. Work will also start at LeBreton Flats East on 5 residential towers that will deliver 1,600 units next to the Pimisi station and our future Central Public Library, on which we will break ground this fall. And I'm proud that we will deliver the first net zero carbon library in Canada, thanks to an important investment secured by Minister Catherine McKenna. I also want to thank Councillors Tierney and Luloff for their support and leadership at the Ottawa Public Library Board over the years. They were both instrumental in getting this project to where it is today. But this flurry of development activity is not limited to downtown, with many projects already starting construction or being proposed for much farther out along Stage 2 LRT's corridor. In the West End, for example, the owners of the Bayshore Shopping Centre have brought forward a plan for 2 towers on that site, a project that will deliver 500 rental units a stone's throw away from the future Bayshore LRT station. In the East End, developers will break ground on 3 towers at the corner of Ogilvie and Cummings, which will offer 850 rental units and 175 hotel rooms and that are a few hundred meters away from the Searville station.
We will also have a retirement home that will offer 400 units at 211 Centrum Boulevard in Orleans, close to Orleans and the future train station.
Activity helped us sustain our local economy and thousands of good jobs throughout the pandemic. And our staff in planning, infrastructure, and economic development played a pivotal role in making sure we didn't skip a beat on that front. In 2020, the city issued 2.6% more building permits than the year before, and the value of those permits increased by 20% from $3.2 billion in 2019 to $4 billion last year. As we all know, not many sectors were that lucky, and the pain was felt particularly hard by our small business owners and the tens of thousands of employees they support across the city. We know small businesses are the backbone of our local economy, and they inject a lot of life and vibrancy into our neighborhoods. Tourism, hospitality, and retail sectors were some of the hardest hit sectors of our local economy, and it will take years to build back to where they were before. But working with our Economic Partners Task Force under the leadership of Councillors El-Shantiri and Dudas, we acted quickly to roll out a number of measures to help small businesses make it through the last 10 months. Under the city's property tax hardship deferral program, we extended tax deadlines for 1,900 property owners, both residents and small businesses, who needed a little bit of breathing room. As the first wave of the virus was slowing down and our economy was getting ready to reopen, our business reopening toolkit received more than 17,500 visits and was downloaded over 1,400 times by small businesses wanting to make sure they were reopening safely. In May, we also launched the recovery stream of the Innovation Pilot Program, which was conceived by our colleague, Councillor Hubley, in order to help local companies test products and technologies that could help us in our fight against COVID-19. Nous avons reçu 47 applications.
We received 47 requests, 5 projects were chosen, and as pilot project with city services and partners.
A company who helps community organizations with a volunteer management solution has expanded from providing it from 1 food bank to 4 food banks, and they now have several new opportunities in their pipeline. Last summer, we expanded opportunities for restaurants and stores to do business outside where customers typically felt safer. Under the Patio Innovation Program, approximately 350 patios and cafes sprung up around the city, roughly 260 more than the previous year. We also had 7 road closures in place for the purpose of expanding patios, and these provided approximately 500 paying seats to those benefiting restaurants and their very happy customers. Another investment made by our economic development team that yielded impressive results in 2020 was a grant to the Ottawa Chinese Community Service Centre to deliver the Women Information Technology Teleworkers program. The program was designed to overcome barriers of internationally trained IT professionals who were not using their skills because they needed to stay at home to care for their children. The pandemic changed this dynamic considerably, and the program launched in April after bringing many employers on board. So far, 24 of the 38 immigrant women in this group have been hired and can work from home as web developers, network architects, business analysts, and user experience designers, just to name a few.
I'm very happy that we were able to make a difference in the life of these women immigrants.
Working with leaders at the Ottawa Council of BIAs, or OCOBIA, the Ottawa Board of Trade, et le Regroupement des gens d'affaires, RGA, to advocate on behalf of small businesses with the provincial and federal governments. Following a letter issued by OCOBIA Chair Mark Kaluski last week, Councillor Kavanaugh and I will bring forward a motion today asking the province to ensure that there's a level playing field among businesses facing closure during this lockdown. It's absolutely unfair to ask small businesses to shut their doors while Costco's and Walmarts across the city are completely accessible to customers because they sell groceries. These big box stores should be cordoning off their non-essential goods sections to respect the spirit of the current pandemic measures, and I hope you will all support this plea to Premier Ford. We know that Ottawa's economy typically weathers the storm better than other Canadian cities, and this was no different throughout the pandemic. Thanks to the presence of the federal government and the tech industry, which played a key role in supporting workers at home during this pandemic, Ottawa's unemployment rate stood at 6.7% in December, the lowest rate amongst Canada's 6 largest cities, and only one of 2 cities under 10%. But we still have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and for lease signs are more noticeable in every part of the city. I want us to return to a thriving economy and the 4.3% unemployment rate our city enjoyed before the pandemic. And we're currently working with our many economic development partners to ensure that the recovery is as strong as it could be and can be. With the vaccination campaign underway, now's the time to plan how our economy can rebound solidly once most of us have been vaccinated and life returns to the new normal.
We know that many persons want to travel, that will try to find adventure and experiences that they've missed during the pandemic.
Concerts and good meals and restaurants with loved ones, all are the good things that make life worth living. Companies will seek out investment opportunities in projects that are green and sustainable to ensure that we rebuild our communities even better. We need to start looking at policy changes, investments, or community building projects that will help us get there. That's why on February 9th, I will host an economic rebound roundtable with leaders in important sectors of our economy so we can identify those key opportunities for our economy and chart a course of action for the city's rebound. This discussion will determine our priorities over the coming months and will feed into the city's new economic development strategy, which will be presented to FEDCO this fall. Now, the private sector, without a doubt, will play a key role in the rebound, and there's already some great projects that will help strengthen our employment in the city in the months to come. The second Amazon Fulfillment Center, the largest construction project in the city's history, is currently taking shape in Barrhaven. It's providing jobs to 500 construction workers on the site, and the project will create up to 1,500 full-time jobs starting this fall. Not that far from that site, construction is progressing rapidly on the Advanced Building Innovation Company, or ABIC, which will create 300 full-time jobs starting this spring. The AI-enabled facility will transform the way residential homes are fabricated, transported, and assembled in our region, while dramatically reducing the amount of waste generated in the process. ABIC is an exciting and innovative project, and I very much look forward to the economic and environmental benefits it will generate in our region. After taking a pause due to COVID, the Ottawa Film Office and Tribro Studios are currently on track to break ground later this year on Ottawa's new soundstage campus and creative hub. This is, of course, contingent on COVID-19 restrictions and their potential impact on the construction sector. But once it gets off the ground, this exciting cultural facility will create hundreds of jobs and support the growth of Ottawa's film, TV, and animation sectors. I
would like to thank Councillor Cloutier for its support for this project and his work with the Office of Ottawa, as well as...
This facility is located literally across the street from the Nepean Sportsplex. Our infrastructure needs to keep up our infrastructure needs to keep up in order to support the flurry of economic activity in the South End. And thanks to Councillor Harder's leadership and strong work and advocacy, the city is now working with the provincial government on the EA for a new interchange at the 416 and Barnsdale Road. This new infrastructure would ensure the residents and businesses have the capacity to easily connect in and out of the 416, a crucial economic corridor for moving goods and services across Ontario. Throughout the pandemic, Invest Ottawa has continued to support our local entrepreneurs and innovators, and as part of its Digital Main Street future-proofing program, the team has helped over 400 small businesses get online quickly to generate new revenues. And that is essential, obviously, in the 21st century, to have that connectivity so people can order online. In the first 3 quarters of 2020, the Invest Ottawa team helped attract $398 million in investments and facilitated 990 new jobs in our region. And I'm pleased to announce that Councillor Suds will be joining the Invest Ottawa Board of Directors in the coming months. I know that with her background and expertise, she will help advance Invest Ottawa's efforts to grow our tech sector and our local economy by supporting the next generation of local innovators and entrepreneurs. Now, despite some ups and downs in our knowledge-based economy this past year, our tech sector and its talent pool remained almost unsurpassed, primarily on the strength of the tech community in Canada, the largest tech park of its kind in North America. Now, according to CBRE, Ottawa retained the #1 spot for the highest concentration of tech talent per capita among 50 markets across North America, coming in at 11.3%, ahead of San Francisco's 10.5%, which includes Silicon Valley. Invest Ottawa has leveraged this deep pool of talent and technology companies to launch the world-class living labs that have become Area X.0 and the Smart Farm and the NCC's research farm. Councillor Harder has for many years championed the vision for Ottawa's Smart Farm. She has been laser focused on the need to increase global food production by 50 to 70% by 2050 so we can manage to feed the projected 9 billion inhabitants of our planet. The Smart Farm helps producers collect and analyze data in real time to make decisions that will maximize their crop yields and their return on investment. In an article on November 3rd in the Globe and Mail, they described the facility as, quote, a one-of-a-kind farm set to change the agri-tech landscape, end quote. So far, 20 innovators and companies have used the Smart Farm to improve their research and technology. And I'm very pleased to say that in its first year, the crop yields achieved at the Smart Farm were approximately 17% higher than on neighboring farms, and their production costs were also well below average, which helped put more money into the pockets of local farmers. Our
partnership in economic development are doing a lot to maintain Ottawa's reputation as a world-class city for technology and innovation.
Friends at Ottawa Tourism are also in full swing to keep up the momentum and our reputation as an impressive host city, and they are making sure we have a solid pipeline of major events for when things come back to normal. Although 24 major events were canceled or postponed due to the pandemic, many, like the Canadian Curling Championships, the Bingham Cup, and the Canoe Kayak Sprint National Championships have already been scheduled to take place in Ottawa. Thanks to continued funding from the city, the Major Events Office has continued to bid on large-scale sporting events and conferences in support of Ottawa's rebound, and we've had some very positive announcements in 2020. These include the CP Women's Open at the Hunt Club next year, as well as Canada's very first Valor Games, a version of the Invictus Games geared towards Canada's veterans, and the 2026 World Wheelchair Basketball Championships, which will be held at TD Place. As our tourism partners know very well, Lansdowne Park in Councillor Menard's ward is a crucial asset for us to attract large-scale sporting and cultural events to the nation's capital. In the past, attracting events like the NHL Heritage Classic, the Grey Cup, Guns N' Roses, the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Brier, and City Folk, and I know it will again in the future host some of these great events. Were it not for the pandemic, we would have seen the arrival of 3 new sports teams at TD Place in 2020, in addition to our beloved Red Blacks and the 67s. The Atletico Ottawa soccer team, an affiliate of Atletico Madrid, was supposed to make its debut at TD Place this past summer, as were the Ottawa Blackjacks professional basketball team and the Ottawa Aces professional rugby team. I know that these new teams are thrilled to be finding a home at TD Place, and I look forward to visiting Lansdowne Park to see them play in our city. In addition to this activity by our economic development partner, I want to make it clear that we at the city have not taken our foot off the gas either, knowing full well that we must always continue to build and plan for the future. The opening of the Confederation Line was a momentous event in our city's history, and it propelled Ottawa into a new era as well as another league of world-class cities. In response to the many issues we encountered in the first year of the system, we have held RTG's feet to the fire to significantly improve the reliability of the system for our transit users, and although more progress is needed, they are on the right track and service has indeed improved. Dans tous les coins de la ville,
everywhere in Ottawa, we can see the progress on the construction of Phase 2 of the light train that will help many collectivities in the south, east, and west of the city.
Last fall, we completed the planning for Stage 3 LRT with the adoption of the Barrhaven Extension EA following the approval of the Canada-Stittsville EA. I know that Councillors Harder, Meehan, Eglai, and Moffat in the south, as well as Councillors Hubly, Suds, Gower, and El Chantiri in the west, are looking forward to the city bringing Stage 3 LRT to their respective communities. So far, I've had very positive discussions with elected officials at the provincial and federal levels on the funding for Stage 3. But with the EAs now approved, we will engage this year in a more formal and coordinated advocacy campaign to appeal to our provincial and federal partners. We also worked with our partners in Gatineau on their plans to see a tram connect Gatineau's west end to Ottawa's downtown, a system that would link our 2 downtowns and serve customers on both sides of the river for STO and OC Transpo. That's still many, many years away, but in the meantime, we've continued to invest in our roads and to deliver new complete streets and improve our active transportation network. Last year, we officially opened Elgin Street in Councillor McKenney's ward, which has been completely transformed into a pedestrian destination thanks to impressive sidewalks and flex spots for new patios. In
December, reopened Rideau Street to cars and buses. Once the project will be finished in the spring, we will have space for bikes and new green places.
We officially opened one of the Canada South Link, Phase 1 rather, of Canada South Link in Councillor Hubly's ward, a full year ahead of schedule. This important new corridor will provide a smooth connection for many Canada residents, Councillor Suds and Hubly and Councillor Gower's residents in Stittsville, out to the 416. In 2020, construction started on the renewal of Montreal Road, which will also feature bike lanes and help revitalize Montreal Road and Vanier itself. We also broke ground on the widening of Strandherd Drive, which is much needed to support the rapid growth of our population in the south end of the city. These investments in road renewal, complete streets, and segregated bike lanes are making our roads safer for all users. And in addition to the many other initiatives being delivered under our Road Safety Action Plan. In 2021, for example, the City of Ottawa will spend a total of $37.8 million on road safety improvements and initiatives compared to $25 million in 2019. Our red light camera program has led to a reduction of 50% in serious T-bone collisions at those intersections, and our 2021 budget will allow us to install another 10 red light cameras this year. Last year, the city launched the Automated Speed Enforcement Program, pilot program, which was one of my campaign commitments to reduce speeding in school zones and enhance safety for children in our community. After designated 8 community safety zones where fines were doubled for speeding infractions, staff initially rolled out 4 cameras, to which 2 more were added at the end of December. In the coming weeks, another 2 cameras will be installed for a total of 8 cameras covering all 8 community safety zones. So far, approximately 47,000 tickets have been issued since mid-July, along with $2.5 million in revenue collected as of early December, which will be reinvested in road safety measures, including priority intersection improvements. Staff have also observed a reduction in operating speeds and greater compliance with posted speed limits, which is the kind of behavioral changes we wanted to see from drivers as part of this program. Notre personnel recherche toujours des occasions.
Our staff is always looking for ways to improve road safety.
And this year, we'll be undertaking the detailed design of 3 high-volume intersections identified in the 2020 study, as well as 3 rural skewed intersections identified for improvement in the Road Safety Action Plan. We'll be making improvements to the cycle track on Laurier Avenue West, which will include a protected intersection at Elgin and Laurier, and the free flow channel at the Jeanne d'Arc interchange is being removed and redesigned as part of Stage 2 LRT. Just before the holidays, we leveraged the Investing in Canada program's COVID-19 resilience stream to make a significant progress on many important projects that support both our local, social, and transportation infrastructure. Ottawa's $20.1 million allotment will help us deliver a new clubhouse for the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, which will benefit community members in Ottawa South, represented by Councillors Deans, Brockington, and Cloutier. The expansion of the Beacon Hill North Community Centre in Councillor Tierney's ward that he's been working very hard towards. $1.2 million invested in upgrades at shelters, $1.5 million in energy efficient upgrades at city facilities, $950,000 in repairs to the historic Byward Market building, this beautiful building on the screen, 13 Wi-Fi projects at community centers across the city, 19 MUPs, bike facilities and sidewalk projects, 12 PXOs and pedestrian signals, and 8 picnic areas in parks. In 2021, we will finish renovating the Blackburn Hamlet Arena in Councillor Dudas's ward, which will reopen to the public in June after a significant upgrade to make it more accessible for all residents. We're also investing in other parks and facilities across the city, including La Rush Park in Councillor Leaper's community, the Corkery Community Building expansion in Councillor El Shantiri's ward, the Cobble Hill Park redevelopment and expansion in Councillor Harder's ward, River Chase Park in Councillor Sudd's community, and the River Rain Park development in Councillor Fleury's ward, to name just a few.
I'm also very proud that we created new bridges to connect our communities.
In the last few years alone, we have delivered the Ottawa crossing over the Rideau River, the Flora footbridge over the Rideau Canal, and the Jackie Holtzman Bridge over the 417. This year, the city will be transforming the Prince of Wales Bridge into an interprovincial active transportation corridor where residents will be able to walk, cycle, and cross-country ski. This historic bridge linking Ottawa and Gatineau was built in 1880 and was last used for train traffic in 2001. A few decades from now, the bridge will no doubt serve as a secondary rail link, bringing Gatineau residents to LeBreton Flats or to the Ottawa Airport. But in the meantime, and with the certainty now that the STO tram project will cross the river using the Portage Bridge, the time has come for the Prince of Wales Bridge to provide active transportation benefits for our residents. In the beginning, the bridge unfortunately served as a corridor to extract and transport natural resources from the land of the Algonquins. That reality is part of Canada's dark colonial past, one that we must recognize if we want to engage in meaningful reconciliation with our Indigenous partners. I read Randy Boswell's column in The Citizen attentively during the holidays, and I agree with him that this bridge crossing the Ottawa River, which has been deemed sacred by the Algonquin people for thousands of years, should bear an Indigenous name. The renaming of the Prince of Wales Bridge will serve as an important symbol of reconciliation between our nations. And I'm pleased to announce that following initial discussions with our Algonquin partners, I'll be seeking your support to rename the bridge the Chief William Commanda Bridge. William Commanda served as the chief of Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabe First Nation from 1951 to 1970. He was an Algonquin elder, a spiritual leader, a promoter of environmental stewardship, and a great bridge builder between our nations. For his dedication and outstanding service to his people, William Commanda was awarded the Order of Canada in 2008, and he's a recipient of the Key to the City here in Ottawa. I could not think of a more fitting name for this great bridge that crosses the Kitchissippi, the Algonquin name for this sacred river. I'm committed to advancing the dialogue over the coming months with the goal of reopening it as the Chief William Commanda Bridge later this year or early next year. In addition to these investments in our infrastructure and the good jobs they sustain, the city's economic development team will of course play a key role in our rebound, and we'll still have a number of initiatives we're working on to deliver. Before the holidays, for instance, we launched the Winter City Grant Program to help BIAs and business associations deliver small capital improvements to beautify or animate commercial main streets.
We work closely with our partners to improve our main streets.
This program received 19 applications, but the initial $150,000 in funding will only allow us to support 6 projects, which include Canada North's outdoor community ice rink for both tech workers and residents, Wellington West's improvement to the LRT gateway into their community, a business district, and the market's repurposing of the BYWARD, byword letters, into a series of 6 unique benches that will improve the public realm and visitor experience. The other 3 projects are in the Glebe, downtown, Rideau, and Quartier Vanier. But we can do more. Staff have also identified an additional $50,000 that could be reprofiled from the existing 2021 economic development funding. Councillor El Shantiri and I will be bringing forward a motion later today that will allow us to fund another 6 projects in business areas across the city. I
hope we can count on your support to deliver these 6 projects in Carp, Chinatown, Stittsville, Westboro, Manatic, and on Elgin Street.
The economic development team is also in the process of reviewing its CIP rollout strategy. And as part of that exercise, they will be coming back to FEDCO this spring with a plan for a new integrated Orleans CIP that leverages our investment in Stage 2 LRT. I know our East End councillors are looking forward to promoting this new CIP and showcasing their community as an ideal place to invest and to do business. We also have strategies to guide our investments in some of our assets and support the tourism industry, like the Spark Street and Byward Market public realm plans. I know our plans for the Byward Market and Spark Street will dictate some of the city's infrastructure investments over the next 5 to 10 years. But how can we work with our partners to deliver on this faster or better? We
must explore every opportunity, as we did with Ottawa 2017.
Ottawa 2017 and our sesquicentennial in 2012, 5 years before the actual date in 2017. And that's the reason those celebrations were such a success for our city and our tourism industry. I believe we have a similar opportunity in 2027, and that's why I'm announcing today the creation of an organizing committee that I will chair to plan the celebrations of the 200th anniversary of the Byward Market just 6 years from now. As we all know, the Byward Market was created by Colonel John By as he was spearheading the construction of the Rideau Canal when Ottawa was a very different kind of place. But what hasn't changed is that the Byward Market remains a major draw for visitors in our city and a symbol of Ottawa's thriving agricultural industry, both past and present. I believe that if we start to plan now, we can land on an exciting plan and find the funds to deliver programming that will help us attract more visitors to the nation's capital, helping hotels, restaurants, and businesses flourish along the way. And who knows, following the rebound of our tourism industry over the next few years, 2027 might be the year to bring back La Machine to amaze thousands of residents and families in the Byward Market and throughout Ottawa. In the meantime, I've been quite encouraged with the new leadership at the Ottawa Markets, and I want to thank Zach Daler, Board Chair Brian Chandler, the whole board of directors and the staff team for the good work that they have done over the last year to lay the foundation for a strong rebound once the pandemic is over. I'm particularly impressed with Ottawa Market's new Farmers First policy, which is a direction I've encouraged for some time. Although a number of new farmers markets have sprung up across the city in recent years, we need to once again attract farmers and local producers to the Parkdale and Byward markets where it all started. The Farmers First approach will help us do just that by offering free stalls to new farmers and giving incentives to local producers, and I'm pleased that the city will help support these efforts. And
this is only one of the ways we support our rural communities.
First Rural Economic Development Strategy, which highlights many actions and measures to encourage investment and job creation in our rural areas. As part of this strategy, the city is currently working with its partners to conduct an inventory and mapping of all our agri-food assets, which will help identify and support new business opportunities in rural Ottawa. In a few weeks, we'll be launching the Rural Business Toolkit, a one-stop shop for investors and business owners containing all the programs and tools that can help them grow their business and create jobs in rural Ottawa. And I want to thank Councillors El Shantiri, Kitts, DeRuse, and Moffat for their advocacy of these initiatives supporting our rural residents and business owners. Now, last summer, we worked with Ottawa Tourism to launch the Rural Cycling and Tourism campaign. At a time when many residents were opting for staycations, we encouraged them to rediscover the beauty and charm of our 4 rural wards while supporting their restaurants and businesses. Included in the campaign were self-guided cycling routes, sample day itineraries, and a photo contest that received almost 1,400 entries. The promotional video for the campaign received over 21,000 views, making it Ottawa Tourism's second most viewed video ever. And once the stay-at-home order has been lifted, we will work with Ottawa Tourism on a similar winter rural tourism campaign, which I know will once again benefit our rural businesses. I suspect part of that winter campaign will include snowmobiling, but George, please don't invite me. At the core of our rural tourism offerings are our cherished rural fairs, Carp, Metcalfe, Navan, Richmond, and the Capital Fair in Gloucester, which were unfortunately not able to take place this year because of COVID-19. This broke the running streak of these long-standing rural events, with the Carp Fair postponing its 157th edition to 2021. Now, given the importance to our rural villages and their contribution to agricultural societies, I'm proud that the city's Rural Affairs Office was able to provide each fair with a $15,000 grant to help them make it through 2020. And I'm pleased to say that if rural fairs cannot be held this summer and fall, the city will once again be there to support them. I want to thank our rural councillors for their advocacy and support on this, and I'm very much looking forward to celebrating with them when our rural fairs are back in action this summer or next. I
think it's important for cultural event organizers to know that they can count on the city during the pandemic.
Continued to flow to these festivals and special events in 2020 and 2021, and I want to assure them that we will continue to go forward to support them, even if their event is not being held this year. That's the only way we can ensure that these great events, from Blues Fest to Capital Pride and the International Writers Festival, can rebound and thrive once we've received the vaccine and the pandemic is over. At the same time, and the same can be said of our funding to the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition, OMIC, which reassigned $25,000 of city funding last year to assist 50 artists in needs with $500 grants as they pivoted to online performances. Councillor Leeper, as we know, played a key role in the development of our music strategy, and I know he has been very supportive of OMIC's efforts in the last few years. We also
have a great relationship with our partners in the Francophone community. And Lise Sarrazin and the RGA are at the heart of our efforts. We're working together on many projects, and I believe that the RGA will help us better serve our business community. I also believe that the city is progressing year after year in providing services and programs of great quality to our Francophone residents. And I'm very proud to say that in 2020, we received only 32 complaints. That is a reduction of 24% compared to 2019 with 42 complaints.
That we've continued to advance social programs and initiatives that help make our city a more inclusive, livable, and welcoming city. As we know, unfortunately, Indigenous peoples, Black, Asian, and other racialized residents have disproportionately been and continue to be the victims of violence, racist graffiti, racial slurs, and they're constantly excluded from employment opportunities and discriminated against in the workplace. The city has a leadership role in addressing systemic racism in our community, and that's why last year we created the Anti-Racism Secretariat and appointed the city's very first council liaison on anti-racism and ethnocultural relations initiatives. I want to again thank Councillor King for accepting to serve in this role and working with the Secretariat. In 2020, the city hired its very first anti-racism specialist to advance the work from within and across all city departments. And the establishment of the Secretariat, some of the progress that has been made includes, and this is just under 1 year, initiating the creation of an anti-racism advisory table, launching a social media awareness campaign to condemn anti-Asian racism, launching the Gender and Race Equity Baseline Study together with the Women and Gender Equity Specialist, creating the Coping with Racial Stress pilot project for youth with the Neighborhood Ambassador Program. In a few weeks, a new Director of Gender and Race, Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development Services will join the city team, a new position and a new internal structure that will allow us to better coordinate our efforts. I'm confident that the team will build on the work that is underway at the Somali community table that I started in 2016, as well as deliver progress to our racialized communities with respect to employment equity, housing, economic development, health outcomes, and youth development. Councillor King's appointment follows that of Councillor Kavanagh in 2019 as the city's very first council liaison on women, and gender equity. On that front, the Women and Gender Equity Strategy is being finalized and will be presented to CPSC and Council in the coming months. The strategy will guide the city in applying the gender lens to all the work we do, steering us towards a more equitable workplace and community. Chief Slowly and his team at the Ottawa Police are also playing a key role in rebuilding relationships and trust with our racialized communities, and that starts with the makeup of our police services itself. I'm proud that this commitment to diversity is reflected in the service's recent graduating class of 96 recruits, which included 32 women, 31 racialized men, and 3 Indigenous new officers. In
2020, our community experienced less violent crime, and I'd like to share with you a few interesting statistics.
8 cases, which were all solved by our women and men in uniform. Shootings were down nearly 40% as well, and our officers recovered a number of guns, taking 105 firearms off our streets. And OPS officers administered naloxone 115 times, saving the lives of 103 residents struggling with addiction. Thanks to the efforts of Councillors El Shantiri and Chair Deans as the head of the police board, Chief Slowly has reinstated the neighborhood policing program, which helps our officers forge lasting and meaningful relationships with residents and community partners in at-risk neighborhoods. In 2019, 3 neighborhood resource teams were deployed in Vanier-Overbrook, Haringate, South Ottawa, and Carlington, Caldwell. And due to their success, the program was expanded to 3 more neighborhoods last year, the Byward Market Lower Town in May, and Centertown and Bayshore in the fall. Under this model, the officers are dedicated exclusively to their assigned neighborhoods for a minimum 2 years, where they work with local residents, schools, not-for-profit organizations, business associations, and city staff to better understand and address crime and its underlying socioeconomic issues. Adequate mental health response, as well as anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism training, are at the core of these programs. And the Ottawa Police Services Board on Monday, Chief Slowly tabled a plan to engage with the community on how OPS can better support the safety and well-being of residents with mental health challenges, including how officers respond to people in mental health crises. Another social issue I'd like to raise attention to this year, and especially as COVID-19 remains in our community, is the epidemic of loneliness that faces so many residents, young and old. A recent Angus Reid survey found that close to half of Canadians describe themselves as sometimes or often lonely and longing for company. And it's been acknowledged in research that profound loneliness can shorten someone's life by as many as 15 years, and it has similar effects as obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Le problème est tellement sérieux que les chercheurs essayent de développer.
The program is so severe that researchers are looking for medication to treat these problems.
To address chronic loneliness that so many residents are struggling with, particularly during COVID-19. For example, in Britain, doctors have started issuing social prescriptions like dance, cooking, and art classes. On a personal note, I found the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders to be a challenge as a single person. As someone who enjoys meeting and spending time with people, the isolation at times and loneliness can be a real challenge. Over the next few weeks, I would ask everyone to take a moment to think of those in their social network and see if there's an old friend or family member that they haven't spoken to in a while. And if there is, simply take the time, pick up the phone and call them. Give them 5 or 10 minutes of your time, have a quick chat, and make their day. Every week, I personally try to call 5 or 6 different seniors I know just to say hello and how they're doing. I hope it is of some help to my senior friends, as I know it's helpful to me. And during the pandemic, to deal with some of those long periods of time when you don't have the events that we're used to going to as elected representatives, I managed to occupy and keep connected with the community by hosting over 50 virtual class visits. I've always enjoyed visiting schools and chatting with engaged students, and I often found it was an enjoyable part of my day that brought some sense of normalcy. Je crois que les élèves ont aussi apprécié nos discussions.
And I believe that the students also appreciated our conversations.
A teacher at Henry Larson Elementary School, she wrote, and I quote, "Your visit brought some joy and excitement to our class in the midst of a difficult school year in which the students are constantly hearing about what they can't do. I overheard one student say, quote, he must think we're important because he visited us. So thank you for making them feel important," end quote. These kids often relayed to me what they were doing to pass the time during COVID, and much of that was doing activities outside their family. They visited a lot of parks and reminded us how beautiful and green our city is. And they also asked the most interesting questions. Do you have a bodyguard? Do you have a limousine? How much do you make? Do you get paid? Do you have a dog? What's your dog's name? It goes on and on. They're really cute questions that I get, and I know they put a lot of work into it as a class project before I arrive online. I was quite proud to tell these students how we're investing in our environment to ensure Ottawa remains a green, sustainable, and livable city for future generations. And I want to thank Councillor Moffat for his stewardship of these environmental initiatives over the last several years. Last September, the Combined Sewerage Store Tunnel, CSST, the jewel in the crown of the Ottawa River Action Plan, was finally put into service to protect the health of this great river. This project will play a crucial role in reducing stormwater flow from going directly into the Ottawa River, helping us to keep our water clean, our fish healthy, and our beaches open more often. As an added benefit, it will also help address possible basement flooding in low-lying areas in Centertown and the Glebe. I'm also proud that on January 1st of this year, our new and strengthened tree bylaw came into effect. L'une des plus grandes richesses d'Ottawa est sa verdure.
One of the greatest wealth of our city is its trees and green spaces.
And that differentiates us from many other large cities in North America. As I promised last year, the new bylaw includes stricter fines to discourage the illegal removal of trees. We also have modified the criteria of a distinctive tree in the inner urban city, which is now defined by having a smaller 30-centimeter diameter after the previous 50 centimeters. Excuse me. This year, the city is completing an inventory of spaces available for tree planting in our urban areas. Staff will then use the map to prioritize new planting locations, which will help us achieve our long-term canopy target growth of 40%, helping us protect this great asset for generations to come. Now, during the State of the City address last year, I announced that we would give the key to the city to a number of accomplished Canadians who have had an impact on our city and its image on the national and international stage. I know the recipients were looking forward to their Key to the City ceremony, which unfortunately had to be canceled due to COVID-19. And I'm hoping we'll be able to host these events in 2021 as a reminder. These recipients are, as you see on the screen, accomplished golfer and 3-time Canadian Press Female Athlete of the Year, Brooke Henderson, l'ancienne gouverneure générale, journaliste, chevronnée et l'ambassadrice mondiale de la francophonie, le très honorable Michael Jean, TSN sportscaster and proud Carleton University journalism grad, James Duthie, and last but not least, the Ottawa Citizen, an organization that has been providing news coverage in the nation's capital for 175 years, the longest continuous running business in all of Ottawa. Eh bien, que nous n'avons pas pu tenir une cérémonie.
Although we could not hold a ceremony, we still honored 15 remarkable residents.
Friend Dr. Anthony Bailey, Ross Bradley, Dale Craig, Ruba Fattel, Sid Gravel, Paul Hindo, Barry Hoban, Barbara McKinnon, Fiona McKean, Bob Manette, David O'Malley, Bruce Roney, Batra Rudra, Vinit Siravastava, Joe Thontengal, and Jean-Sophia Guillaume will also be awarded the Brian Kilray Award for Excellence in Coaching, which recognizes the contributions of an amateur coach who exemplifies leadership and commitment. These residents have all left their mark in our community in sectors like academia, medicine, community activism, and business. And I look forward to celebrating their achievements at a ceremony later this year with my colleagues from City Council. And I look to later this year with a sense of cautious optimism, because I dare to think that 2021 will end on a much better note than it began. Ottawa's own Spartan Bioscience received approval from Health Canada just a few days ago for its COVID-19 rapid test kit. I'm hoping that rapid testing will help us better control the pandemic, as well as reopen our economy in the coming months and our schools in the coming days or weeks. With our vaccination campaign now underway, there is in fact light at the end of the tunnel of this pandemic we have been facing for close to a year now. Based on the guidance of our federal and provincial partners, I'm hoping that most members of our community have been vaccinated by the end of this summer. Cette campagne de vaccination est un effort
This campaign is a monumental community effort, and I want to thank all the partners that are involved.
Their leadership, Ottawa Public Health, as well as our very own hardworking paramedics who are lending a hand and managed to vaccinate in record time all the residents, workers, and primary caregivers of Ottawa's 28 long-term care homes who wish to be vaccinated. And I'll read an excerpt from a note sent by David Eglid, Chair of the Board of Directors of the Osgood Care Centre in Councillor DeRuza's ward, to Paramedic Chief Pierre Poirier about their impact, the paramedics' impact in our community. And I quote, "Comments I received here were that the teams were very well organized, efficient, fast, and gentle. The latter is particularly key in dealing with long-term care community residents. I was told that there was a 101-year-old resident who never wants to so much as take a pill, so a vaccine seemed unlikely. One of the paramedics asked to talk to the individual, and lo and behold, was able to coax her into receiving the vaccine," end quote. It warms my heart to know that our staff is making this kind of a difference in the lives of our residents. And I look forward to hearing many more moments like this, as the vaccination campaign progresses in our community. There
will be many more moments of hope and comfort in the coming months.
Remain hopeful and kind to take good of COVID-19. I hope that by this time next year, when I deliver the State of the City address in January of 2022, things will have returned to normal, or as close to normal as possible for us, and that we will once again be a healthy and thriving city as we were merely a year ago. Let's have faith, and I know we can get through this together. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. I believe Councillor Suds has a motion, please.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Be it resolved that the Mayor's remarks given at the City Council meeting on January 27th, 2021 be appended to the minutes of today's council meeting.
On the motion, carried.
Carried.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbaux, confirmation of the minutes of the regular council meeting of December 9th and the special city council meeting of December 18th, and confirmation of the minutes of the Auditor General hiring panel meeting of December 17th, 2020. Carried?
Carried.
A declaration of interests, including those originally arising from prior council meetings, déclaration de conflit d'intérêts, y compris ceux découlant de réunions antérieures. Any declarations? No. Communications as presented, as well as petitions and regrets. No regrets have been filed. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Councillor Deans, please, seconded by Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Mayor. That Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 18, Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Wastewater Management Report 13, Planning Committee Reports 34 and 35, Transit Commission Report 8, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending January 22nd, 2021, and summary of the oral and written public submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of December 9th, 2020 be received and considered.
On the motion, carried.
Carried.
Next item is postponements and deferrals. We have the Byward Market Public Realm Plan, Plans de domaines du public du marché by. And we have one direction. Councillor Menard, do you want to introduce your direction before we open it up for debate so everyone knows what it is?
Yes, Mayor, thank you for that. Just pulling it up here. So the direction to staff, that staff be directed to bring a memorandum back to council in April 2021 on the status of the downtown wayfinding strategy and consultation efforts being led by Ottawa Tourism, the city, Tourism Outaouais, and the NCC, particularly as it relates to signage for restrooms in the core and the two new self-cleaning standalone units. Finding the public washrooms that already exist downtown benefits both vulnerable populations who need these essential services and economic recovery in our tourist and business districts. In concert with the update from the Human Needs Task Force on portable washrooms and a map-based data layer of public washrooms, this memo should summarize planned efforts for 2021 and beyond to demonstrate progress and momentum on accessible public washrooms. Thank you.
Okay, so I think this would be Mr. Willis. Is there any difficulty with this direction, Mr. Willis?
No, Mayor.
Okay.
On behalf of Mr. Willis, no, that can certainly be undertaken.
Okay, thank you. Councillor El-Shantiri, please.
Well, you asked my question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I was just going to ask because we haven't seen this before, how staff comment about it, but we heard from Mr. Willis. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sides, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a question, presumably for Mr. Willis, and that is just as this moves ahead, I view this as a really great opportunity to look at leveraging some of the city's vertical assets and look to pilot public Wi-Fi in the market as we look at revitalizing this area. So I'm curious, I haven't seen any discussion of this to date, but I'd really like to see that incorporated into the vision and the work underway. Is that a possibility?
So Mayor, I can give an initial answer. Court Curry may add to this. The interdepartmental groups working on pilot projects using public assets is still doing its exploratory work. And I would actually agree with the councillor that should we find a mechanism to move forward, this would be a good candidate area. I don't think it precludes anything that's in the plan before you today, and we'll certainly take that as a consideration as we go forward to implementation.
Terrific. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Sons. Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, I believe probably for Mr. Willis. Mr. Willis, I just want to be clear here. There's a notional price tag put on this of I believe $129 million. And am I correct at this point that there is no actual funding for this project?
Mr. Willis or Mr. Curry?
So Mr. Curry will answer that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, Councillor, the price tag is $129 million in 2020 dollars. The important point here is that we finally have a cohesive plan for the Byard Market public realm. We've had a number of disconnected initiatives over the last few years that have not presented an opportunity to have kind of a solid vision. So we have a plan now that already has borne fruit. As you know, Council, as the Mayor indicated in his remarks today, has put $1.5 million of the provincial COVID funding into the public realm plan with the 2 washrooms and the investments in the building. So we have now a plan that will be implemented on the basis of affordability. We're looking for senior level funding. We will be looking at our asset management plans to see what we can bring in from asset management dollars where possible. Certainly looking for private sector partnerships, and we intend to fold this into the long range financial plan when it's updated. The projects that are set out for this year in 2021 are funded, and Council did fund through the 2020 budget back in the late fall.
But the major spending, if you will, on this proposal, if it gets passed today, that will come back to us, correct?
Yes.
With a full funding proposal, whether it be from the city or other levels of government or some combination.
Yes, Mayor. Certainly through future capital budgets, we'll bring forward projects, the design dollars and the implementation dollars. And certainly if there are federal provincial infrastructure programs that become available, we will seek council direction to apply for those programs accordingly.
Okay, no, I just wanted to clarify that because $129 million is a lot of city taxpayer money. And there are a lot of projects throughout the city. So I'd like to know that we're actively seeking to fill up that platter of funding, if you will, from the other levels of government, from private sector, because for the city to take on funding the $129 million on their own, I think would be quite significant on the city taxpayer. So thanks for confirming that we will be looking for other sources of funding, and that any funding decisions are still to come back to council for approval. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Aglai. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning. My comments are exactly aligned with those of the previous speaker. The correspondence I've received from my residents to date are concerned about the price tag. I love the Byard Market. When I travel out of Ottawa, I go to public markets. I love the vibrancy and the choices, and it's all of your senses are engaged when you go to a market, and certainly the history of Ottawa has the Byard Market at the forefront of that history. So I do want to see a redesigned Byard Market, and I like the plan before us. But people are quite concerned with the price tag. It's fine to go to the provincial and federal governments. I'm just concerned about how many times we go. We're going for the LRT. We're going for the Baseline Road Rapid Bus Corridor. We go to them for other projects. I can't list them all, but I'm just curious how the provincial and federal governments prioritize when to give the City of Ottawa money. And I don't know if Mr. Willis can chime in whether they have a specific focus on things like the market. Obviously, it's not public transportation. It's not that type of focus, but the feds and the provincial government provide grants and funding for a whole bunch of reasons. But would this be looked favorably by upper levels of government?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to answer this in two parts. One is that part of the financing of this project will come as we replace our assets in this area through natural life cycle renewal. And we have to have a coordinated plan on actually how they should replace so we build back better. And that's what the plan is for you to have a coordinated approach about how we take this area. There, for example, that parking garage will need replacement. There are some of the oldest water mains in the city and the roads there that will need replacement. So it's all about building back better when we go in and spend our money. As for the senior levels of government, as we saw before Christmas in the program, they come up with programs with very tight criteria, whether it's a rapid housing initiative, whether it's focused on economic development, and there are criteria. And we know that the two sectors that are hit hardest in the city and in most major cities are the small business, mom and pop, restaurants, small stores, and the tourism sectors. And if you look at the intersection of those two items, this is exactly a target area in the city of Ottawa that where their program is looking for the recovery of those areas, we think this will be a strong candidate. And as we've said in the past, you can't attract that money to those programs if you don't have a plan of what you're going to do with that money. So by having a plan in place, it improves our capacity to actually chase the funding at the senior levels of government. So we are dependent on what they're prepared to do, but we expect all program funding to be targeted, this will make this a candidate.
And for private sector investment, why would a private sector investor want to be part of this project? What would they get out of it?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we have private sector partners all the times. If you look at what our business improvement areas do in all of the areas of the city, and they do an enormous amount of activity to promote their areas, invest in the beautification and the like. And we have a BIA in this area who is already our partner. And in terms of the private sector advice we're getting through Ottawa markets as well, we have partnerships available. So, when we talk about private sector partners, people may step up and own, people might even sponsor the opportunity to do some streetscaping or beautification projects. Again, by having a plan, we might actually attract that interest and be able to deploy that.
Excellent. Okay, and final question. The answer is probably yes, but I'll just ask anyway. The conversion of city-owned streets within the market for other purposes other than driving cars, mainly pedestrian, the City of Ottawa will maintain ownership of the land. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for those answers. Thanks, Mayor. That's it from me.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Brongdon. Councillor Dudas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand as part of the report that the design competition for Rideau Sussex in partnership with the NCC is already part of the recommendations. But I was just seeking a little bit more understanding in regards to the direction you're hoping to receive for council and what you're anticipating for the request for information about the proposed destination building. This building will hold a lot of opportunities to draw tourists and residents to the core, and I really want to make sure that we're doing it properly and there's opportunity for a lot of great creative ideas and opportunities for economic development and increased tourism. So I was just wondering if staff could comment on what you're anticipating you'll get back from that and what next steps would be in terms of that process.
So, Councillor, I'll respond to your question in two parts as well. On the notion of design competitions, you'll see in the draft official plan language that's been tabled that there's an interest in promoting design competitions, both in the private sector and public sector across Ottawa in our design priority areas. So certainly, as you note, the Rideau Sussex node, we've called for design competition for that node. And certainly as we implement other infrastructure projects over the coming years, we'll look to undertake design competitions, whether they're local or national in scale for these important projects being part of the Byron Market District. In terms of the RFI for the garage, we've established some high-level principles. That destination building must be...
Cora, can you speak up a little bit, please? Bring the mic closer to you. Some colleagues are having difficult hearing.
Sorry about that, Mayor. The RFI, we've established high-level principles. There must be a public use, it must respect the Heritage Conservation District policies. It must have some element of parking to it. But at this point, really, Mayor is seeking partners out there in the marketplace, whether they're the non-for-profit sector or the private sector, to come bring forward their best ideas From there, we will recommend a procurement process that may include a design competition to council in due course. But we're really at very early days in terms of soliciting information at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarity.
Great, thank you. Councillor Deans, I believe. Is it Councillor Luloff or Dean? Councillor Luloff, I'm sorry, and then Councillor Deans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I also really love the Byward Market, and I used to work there, and I like this plan. Councillor Dudas and I have an unfunded streetscape plan for St. Joseph that is nearly a decade old and is constantly being refreshed without any progress on it whatsoever. We have hundreds of overhead wires that need to be buried with an estimated cost of just over $5 million. I've asked my residents to be patient as we slowly collect development charges to fund improvements. Stittsville Main could use a lift, just as several other main streets across the city that could also use funding. 180 million could go a really long way if we spread it out across the city. Rideau, Elgin, Montreal Road are all either complete or underway. So I find it difficult to tell my residents to be patient when we continuously look to fund projects in areas that are already benefiting from significant street and tourism traffic in normal times. That's really all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question and then a comment. My question is around the accessibility plan. I had an email from a former resident of mine who's now a resident in the Byward Market. She and her husband are both legally blind, and they are concerned with the accessibility plan. So, Mr. Curry, I wonder if you could just outline for us the accessibility plan that goes along with this overall program.
Mayor, if you'll just endeavor to give us a moment, I'll ask the file lead for the public realm, Jill Savage, to respond to the council's question.
Hi, Councillor. Thank you for the question. This is Jill Savage. Through you, Mayor, the plan has had very sort of close consultations with the City of Ottawa's Office of Accessibility throughout the 2-year process. And the plan, it's done at a functional design level. However, meeting accessibility criteria that works for the City of Ottawa is very important to the plan. Some of the hallmarks of accessibility are to maintain clear paths of travel with a clear way that is more than 2 meters wide. And as you likely know, 2 meters is a minimum for important areas of the City of Ottawa, and the Byward Market is looking to increase that minimum clearway to larger than 2 meters on all sidewalks in the Byward Market. We also need to select the proper surface treatments in the Byward Market so that we ensure pathways are level, well-maintained, firm, so people can navigate the surface itself. We don't want to have pavers all over this area. We want to ensure people don't get fatigued if they have mobility devices. We are also introducing a new design target for furnishings. We are proposing furnishings every 30 meters so people can sit when they need to sit in the market core. And we're also ensuring the furnishings that we introduce are accessible themselves. And parking obviously is very important. The plan is directing accessible parking in the market core, which is proximate to destinations that people want to get to. We've heard from people in Ottawa that use accessible parking, that if these spots are located kind of around the corner, they don't really work. And so the plan also recommends accessible parking in the market core. The plan also recommends a closer look at accessible details at the next phase of engineering and detailed design.
Okay, thank you. And has there been consultation with the community on the accessibility plan for the Byward Market?
Absolutely. Accessibility has been important throughout this plan process. And the Accessibility Office has been tremendous stewards for us, as well as people who live and work in and around the Byward Market who require, who have mobility challenges.
Okay, and as we move forward, you will continue that. Okay, that answers my question. I just wanted to say a few words in support of this recommendation. I recognize that we're all ward councillors and that we all obviously want to see the very best for our own communities, and we want to make sure that we all get a fair piece of the pie, and that is absolutely fair enough. But we are also city councillors, and as city councillors, we really have to ensure that we are making decisions in the best interest of our city, that's the nation's capital. And to me, the Byward Market is among the best assets that we have as a national capital city. It's a huge tourism draw for this city. It's where tourists come, it's where business people come. It is a front-facing look at the city of Ottawa, and we need to ensure its long-term health and viability for the good of our entire city. And my concern has been that the Byward Market has been deteriorating over the last number of years. We've seen a lot of crime in the Byward Market, and relative to other neighborhoods, declining property values. That, to me, is a very worrisome sign about the future health of our very city. If you kill your core, you kill your city. And I think we should all bear that in mind. And so we need a strong plan for the Byward Market to ensure going forward its health and vitality, not just for the residents of Lower Town, but for the residents of the entire city of Ottawa. And that's why I support this plan, and that's why I hope as we move forward, we continue to enhance it. I know it's a lot of money. I recognize that we need help to financially to make this work, but this is in all of our interests, and that's why I think we should support the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Meehan, please. Questions and comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to reiterate the comments of my colleague Diane Deans. I worked in the market for several years, and I witnessed what I believe is a deterioration of the gem, really in the tourism crown of Ottawa. When people come to Ottawa, they invariably end up on Parliament Hill, and within easy walking distance is the Byward Market. It's on everybody's tourist map, but unfortunately, the Byward Market its reputation is quite tarnished right now. And we have to invest in the Byward Market because to do so is to basically turn our back on what is an important draw to the nation's capital. This is a historic market. The last time I spoke about the need to invest in the Byward Market, I was accused of being against the residents who make their home in the Byward Market, and that's people who rely on some of our social services, and nothing could be further from the truth. I believe that the Byward Market needs a concerted, dedicated plan to not only help our local businesses in the market thrive and survive, but also to make the market a place for visitors and a place for those who call the market home. So I am for this investment, but I'm also for comprehensive social services, housing programs, so that we have day programs for the people who must make their home in the market, that they have places to go. For those of you who are not aware, Professor Linda Duxbury wrote a very comprehensive report for the police service on some of the issues that the businesses in the Byward Market, the BIA, people who live in the towers around the market, the issues that they face each and every day of living in the market. So for those of you who are not aware of that, I would ask you that you do take a look at that. The issues are real, the crime is real. But so in making this investment and for attracting private sector, we have to assure them that some of the underlying problems that we have in the market, and that's lack of housing and lack of good programs for people who live down there, they have to be in place as well. We cannot do this solely one piece at a time. Everything has to work together in order for this to be a success. So that's, I will support this today, but I would love to support to make sure that the funding is there to help people who live there and want to remain there. But it has to work for everybody. And I hope that's clear today. I am not anti-homelessness. I am not any of that stuff. We are making a big investment. We're asking people to invest. We have to make sure that everybody is looked after. We can do in the Byward Market what was done in New York City. And it's time that this happens, that we make a serious effort. To do so would be illogical and would be cutting off our tourism noses. This has to work, and I would like to support this plan and make sure that it does. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Conseiller Fleury.
Monsieur le maire, si ça vous dérange pas, j'aimerais aller à la fin. Je sais que...
I would like to go at the end of the list because someone else would like to talk before me.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Yeah, I join my colleagues in supporting that we need to do something about the Byward Market. And the ideal situation is that people can live there too. It's not just a tourism place, because that's what makes it thrive. That's the soul. You need the mixture, and that's important. I really appreciate the improvement to cycling that has just happened on Rideau Street. That is a huge improvement, very, very helpful. We still need more. I can tell you, I've cycled to the market many, many times, and more connections are needed from coming from the south and from the west. So that will help as well. Don't forget those things. But overall, we need this to get better, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on this plan. Merci.
Okay, Councillor Fleury.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, and
thank you very much.
All members of council for your engagement throughout the last number of years, and most specifically in the lead up to the release of the report that came to FEDCO late in the year. I want to thank the mayor's office and the city manager's office as well for ensuring that the plan was in the term of council priority, and certainly seeing it through as we are today. Specific thank you to the team that's led the effort: Cord Curry, Jill Savage, Kim, and so many of our city partners. I want to make a special mention. It's a very challenging area, as many of you know, because of competing interests on a lot of fronts. But this is one of the projects that's rallied all of the stakeholders together. Lower Town Community Association, the BIA, Ottawa Tourism, the National Capital Commission. We can go on in the list of organizations that have endorsed our plan, that have been part of the consultation, and that really see the need for us to have a comprehensive approach to the public spaces in the area. Comme vous le savez, c'est un honneur.
As you know, it's an honor to represent the zone. It's not always easy. It's an historical location. Like Councillor Meehan said, we have very specific issues with our big city, but the plan has to recognize the part of the resident played, how important this zone is important, this area is important. Some of the interventions mention the cost. Cost is always a factor, but think about it. The main owner of the market is the CCN, the NCC. They are responsible with the federal government, and they have to help us moving forward with this plan. We will have a an event in 2026. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, to have a group that will work on that. This is a very nice initiative. I think we have an opportunity for tourism there. You know that when they visit Ottawa, they go almost everywhere. They also go to the market, and the market is an icon. Yes, of course, it went through some difficulties and challenges in the past years, but on the tourist plan, I think that the provincial minister responsible for tourism sees that this is a very good opportunity.
Everyone that's participated, we had engagement from residents citywide, from the tourism sector on the development of the plan. I want to thank the team. And I think it's an important day for council as it relates to looking at our assets. How do we improve them? How do we plan accordingly? Obviously, pending today's vote, our next steps will be to regroup and be strategic on how do we ask and how do we make sure that the feds and the province are there to support meeting the objectives of the plan. So thank you all around for your interest, for your engagement, and now let's see the plan through. And merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Alors, merci beaucoup. Does anyone else wish to speak to the item who hasn't already spoken? Let me just offer a couple of comments. I think, a number of members of council recognize that the Byward Market is not a ward asset, it's a city asset. It's similar to Lansdowne is not a local community area. It's a citywide resource. City Hall is, the EY Center, and so on. So the other issue, of course, that we have to take into account is this is a large request for dollars. But this is the first step along the journey. Everything is not going to be done in 1 year with the whole budget spent in that 1 year. It's going to be over a number of years. And as I mentioned in my State of the City address today, we've got close to $1 million from the federal and provincial governments that will do significant work and upgrades to the Byward Market building, which is, Councillor Fleury has it right behind his back, a very appropriate backdrop for today's meeting. We will go out, just as we've done for other city building projects, and seek the support of other levels of government. I think there'll be an interest in the private sector, obviously, if the garage comes down and there's a potential for a very exciting building on that corner. The challenge the market has had, and it's somewhat, it's been a challenge, I think, because we now have close to 20 markets around the city. And before, the only two games in town, for all intents and purposes, was the Byward Market and then later on the Parkdale Market. And so what used to be a must-go-to destination for people looking for fresh produce and crafts and so on has now been diluted because there's a really great farmers market in Orleans and one in Riverside South and one in Cumberland. And there's one at Lansdowne, of course, and Westboro. They've all done very well, but they've taken business away from those two primary markets. And we need to do something to revitalize and rejuvenate that important city asset. And as we approach the 200th anniversary of the market, it's the longest longest continuous operating market in North America. We want to be able to celebrate the restaurants, the bars, the shops, the farmers' stalls, the craftspeople. And in order to ensure that we're inviting people to see our best, we need to invest in that particular piece of property because it has seen certainly better days. But I'm not going to be negative on the market. I think it's still a fun place to go and visit. It's still exciting and vibrant, and the buskers that you see down there and the work that the BIA does and ties in with the Rideau BIA as well as the art gallery. The connectivity with LRT is going to make it a even more exciting destination because you can basically get off at the station and come right through and hit the Byward Market building, just a few steps literally from the Rideau station of LRT. So the potential market for that area is significant. Alors, c'est un temps pour nous autres de donner notre appui à cette marché très important.
It's time for us to support this sector.
We'll celebrate
must support our city, yes, and we must celebrate our heritage and our history with this
So,
very important
I'd
market.
encourage people to support this. Every single expenditure to address the very legitimate question that Councillor Luloff raised and Councillor Egli as well, I apologize, has to come back to council. So this is not sending a blank check to the group. But I do want to thank Court and Steve Willis and the team that Councillor Fleury mentioned. Thank the councillor for his advocacy, because while it's in his ward, he also recognizes it's really a city-wide facility that we want to invest in. So on that, on the report that's before us, carried?
Carried.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Merci. Next is reports from the city clerk, les rapports de greffier municipal, status update, council inquiries and motions for the period ending January 22nd, 2021, rapport de situation pour la période à se terminer le 22 janvier 2021. Received? Received. Committee reports, Built Heritage Committee Report number 18, rapport numéro 18 de sous-comité de patrimoine bâti, application to alter 540 Manor Avenue. Carried? Adopté? Application to demolish and rebuild detached garage at 114 Stanley Avenue. Carried? Item 5, Climate Change Master Plan, Annual Greenhouse Gas Inventory Status Update and Administrative Amendments. Carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Next, item 6, zoning bylaw amendment 250 and 252 Hinchy Avenue, modification de règlement de zonage 250 et 252 Avenue Hinchy. Carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Item 7, modification de règlement de zonage 1642 Chemin Maryville, modification of 1642 Maryville Road, zoning bylaw amendment. Carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Item 8, zoning bylaw amendment 284 King Edward Avenue, modification de règlement de zonage 284 Avenue King Edward.
Carried.
Dissent.
Dissent by Councillor Fleury. Item 9, zoning bylaw proposed work plan, proposition de plan de travail pour un nouveau règlement de zonage. Councillor Meehan has, I believe, a direction to staff. Councillor, if you'd like to introduce that, please. I think you might be on mute, Councillor. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. My direction that the Planning, Infrastructure, Economic Development staff, as part of the new zoning bylaw proposed work plan, be directed to review minimum front yard setbacks in light of public concerns on vehicles and driveways blocking sidewalks, as well as winter snow storage, and to review side yard setbacks from roundabouts. Thank you.
And Mr. Willis, you're comfortable with this direction from Councillor Meehan?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so that is on. And on the report this is Agriculture and Rural Affairs and Planning Committee. Carried?
Carried.
I know a lot of work went into that. Thank you to those members of that committee. Item 10 is amendments to the permanent signs on private property bylaw 2016-326, modification règlement pour des propriétaires privés, règlement 216-326. Agricultural Affairs and Planning Committee joint recommendation. Carried?
Carried.
Item 11, demolition control 181, 183, and 187 Holland Avenue. Motion demande de démolition des bâtiments situés au 181, 183 et 187 Avenue Holland. Carried? Planning Committee report number 35, rapport numéro 35 du Comité de l'urbanisme, framework for adopting a community benefits charge bylaw to replace current section 37 policies.
Carried.
Carried. Item 13, zoning bylaw amendment 33 Maple Grove Road, modification règlement de zonage 33 Chemin Maple Grove.
I'll vote no, Mr. Mayor, dissent if it's going to be carried.
Okay, so on the motion,
Carried.
Carried.
Dissent by Councillor Hubley.
Dissent.
And Meehan.
Kavanaugh and Meehan. Okay. Item 14, development charge complaint, 1325 Johnson Road. Plainte relative aux redevances d'aménagement 1-3-2-5 Chemin Johnson.
Carried.
Carried.
Dissent.
Dissent.
Dissent by Eglai and
Riley.
And
Right.
Councillor King as well.
Okay.
And Leaper.
Okay. Transit Commission report number 8, rapport numéro 8 de la Commission de Transport en Commun. Delegation of authority contracts awarded for the period January 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2020 for Transit Commission. Délégation de pouvoir, contrat accordé pour la période de 1er janvier au 30 juin 2020 pour la Commission de Transport en Commun. Carried or received, sorry.
Received.
Bulk consent agenda. I have one request to remove item I, and I believe Councillor Leaper has a motion. Or are we, I think we're just withdrawing it, Councillor Leaper, if I'm not mistaken, and there are some technical issues that have to be worked out, I believe.
Yeah, staff had prepared a motion to defer it, but if we don't need it, that's fine.
Yeah, so you'll move, seconded by Councillor Harder, to defer it to the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, all in favor of that?
Carried.
Carried. Does anyone else wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? Anything else? No? On the bulk consent agenda as presented, minus item I? Carried?
Carried.
Motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption de rapport. Councillor Deans, please. Seconded by Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Built Heritage Subcommittee Report 18, Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Waste and Water and Waste Management Report 13, Planning Committee Reports 34 and 35, Transit Commission Report 8, and the reports from the City Clerk entitled Status Update, Council Inquiries and Motions for the period ending January 22nd, 2021, and summary of oral and written public submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of December 9th, 2020 be received and adopted as amended.
On the motion, carried, adopté. Merci. Motions of which notice have been previously given. Motion dont avait été donnée entièrement. Councillor Fleury, seconded by Councillor Deans. Councillor Fleury, if you'd like to introduce your motion, please.
Oui, Monsieur le Maire, est-ce que le greffier pourrait, la greffière adjointe?
Could the city clerk put it up on the screen? It will take a minute.
So just to give members of council context, this stems from budget discussions. It's not a budget item, and it flows through the Ottawa Police Services Board, and that's how the chair is involved in this. So let me read the motion. Whereas the City of Ottawa is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emission, and whereas the city is planning to install 24 new on-street electric vehicle charging stations at 12 stations across Ottawa, whereas these stations are being installed as part of the street parking facility improvements and to increase uptake of electric vehicles in Ottawa, whereas switching from gas and diesel to electric vehicles is one of the most important actions required to meet Ottawa's target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2050, and whereas to meet this target by 2030, 90% of new vehicles sold will be electric. Therefore, be it resolved that City Council requests that the Ottawa Police Services Board ask that the Ottawa Police Services to work with the City of Ottawa and its partners in Barrie, an affiliate of Hydro Ottawa, with support under the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program to complete an assessment in 2021 to determine if an electric vehicle pilot project can be implemented by the Ottawa Police Services where operationally feasible.
Okay. Okay, I think that last part is important because obviously we don't want to put our police officers at a disadvantage. We have to obviously have vehicles that can travel at relatively high speeds if they're on their way to an emergency or chasing someone who's driving drunk or so on. We don't want to put them at an advantage. I don't know enough about the new electric vehicles, if they have the power, I suspect they don't, of traditional vehicles, but if there are other vehicles within their fleet that are not required for high-speed pursuits and so on, I think this is an idea that we leave it to the police to give us their best advice, and it will come back to us, is my understanding. Is that correct, Councillor Fleury? It'll come back. Obviously, it'll have to be approved by the chief, the board, and council.
That's right.
Okay. Councillor Hubley has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to follow up on what you had just said, that the report will come back to council. I'm wondering if staff can give an indication of what it will cost to do this assessment, and do they have the funds within their budget to complete it?
Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I don't, Councillor Hubley, we don't have anyone from police here.
Okay, if someone can get back to us about that, I think that's an important piece for this motion, is whether or not we're looking at additional funding to complete it or not.
Sure. Councillor Deans, maybe you can follow up on that on behalf of Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have discussed this with OPS, and we are happy to look at it. I mean, the problem is that there are only 2 manufacturers that could supply vehicles, but we are happy to take a look at it, and we will. This motion places this before the Police Services Board. We'll take a look at all of that, and when it comes back to you, we'll have a clearer idea.
Great, thank you. Councillor Menard.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I'm glad this motion has been brought forward to look into this. I know several other police forces around North America have also been moving in this direction. The Tesla 3 is very fast. Many of them are being replaced with that. So I'm glad that it's been brought forward. Thanks.
Councillor Suds, please.
I just wanted to also express my support from this. I think it's important that we start looking in this direction, as our bylaw officers have done, and we have some electric vehicles in our fleet there. Respecting the limitations, I would argue my little electric car goes pretty darn fast. So the technology is coming a long way, and I think it's important we start to look at this. So thank you.
I don't want to see your car in a drag race in Canada, Councillor. Okay, on the motion, carried.
Carried.
Next is by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Harder. Councillor King, if you'd like to introduce your motion, we'll put it up on the screen.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we make land acknowledgements recognizing the owners and custodians of the land that we're on, we're doing many things. We're honoring the people of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people who have lived on this territory for millennia. We're recognizing that their culture and presence have nurtured this land. Land acknowledgement, however, also should set the preconditions for action. The City of Ottawa's Reconciliation Action Plan answered the call of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action to address the residential school legacy and advance the reconciliation process in Canada. Part of this is the renaming of public spaces, which represents and respects the principles of reconciliation. And so I'm very pleased today to introduce this motion, seconded by Councillor Harder, to rename Langevin Avenue in Ward 13, Rideau Rockcliffe, to Commanda Way. This motion to rename Langevin Avenue honors the survivors of the residential school system and their legacy, but in turn, we're also celebrating the life and legacy of an Algonquin leader, William Commanda. William Commanda was the great-grandson of Paquin Watik, an Algonquin elder who led his people from the Lake of Two Mountains to the site of what is today Kitigan-Zibi. His grandfather was a chief. And while he may have always been destined to be a leader with that lineage, his own personality and gifts made him truly a one-of-a-kind and a leader with conviction. He was a leader both of his community and for his nation. He was a historian, a guardian of his culture, an expert canoe builder, a peacemaker, and a land protector, an original environmentalist. Long before it was on vogue, William Commanda understood in his soul that protecting biodiversity was not something that was simply nice to do, but critical for our future. He was the sacred keeper of several Algonquin wampum belts, which are of incredible importance as they hold the record of prophecies, histories, treaties, and agreements. Throughout his long life, he promoted peace, harmony, and racial equality for all, through his leadership of an international peace and environmental movement, the Circle of All Nations. His early life was not easy. He experienced poverty and hunger and witnessed the tyranny of Indian agents. When he was a small child, he narrowly escaped being sent to a residential school because he hid out in the bush. Thus, when Algonquin street names were provided by the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition, the organization formed in 2001 as a means to present a unified voice on behalf of the Aboriginal community in Ottawa to Langevin Avenue residents and many members of the Linden Lee community who originally asked for the change in 2018, it was particularly poignant that William Commanda's name was ultimately selected by them. He was a dedicated role model for those who sought spiritual guidance as they navigated the pain of their residential school experiences. I cannot think of a more fitting way to honor that legacy. I'd like to acknowledge the work of the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition and of Elena Abel, the city's Indigenous Relations Specialist, and former Councillor Toby Nussbaum for initiating this substantive consultation process prior to me taking office. Most importantly, I would like to thank the residents who participated in the long journey of consultation, which included an in-person Indigenous-led community forum with residents before the pandemic, a subsequent community meeting, a survey completed by 100 community members, discussions on the community online mailing list, and the notification of the offices of the chiefs of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe host nations over the past 2.5 years. Reconciliation is a journey, not a destination. But as the saying goes, journeys are made up of 1,000 steps. This renaming is just one step, a step that demonstrates that through action, we as a city are committed to the path of reconciliation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Fleury, please.
Monsieur le maire, premièrement, pour pas inquiéter personne, moi
Well, so that nobody worries, I totally support my colleague, Councillor King. What I want to say has to do with our objectives with reconciliation. Could we, in the group of people looking at the street name designation, could we ask them to make an effort? I've seen the name recently of the Rideau Goulburn ward, and I'm just wondering if we couldn't put in place a committee to look at this issue more thoroughly in a broader way. Well, there is a committee in charge for street names. And we must get their permission, because if a group asks fire department and paramedic if it's an acceptable name, it's not acceptable to have 2 or 3 streets that with the same name. So there is a process in place for this, Councillor, and I think it's the responsibility of the City Clerk's office. It's up to this office to explain the process for all to all members of council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm aware of this process, but I'm wondering that in terms of reconciliation, did we do a systemic review of all our names? And maybe it could be a direction to give to the city clerk's team to support our efforts of reconciliation. Well, if you have a direction to give, maybe Mr. O'Connor could follow up on this and talk with you for a more complete answer. Very well, Mr. Mayor. I'm not ready for this, but I'll follow up with Mr. O'Connor.
Okay. Councillor Brockington, please, on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting this motion, and I do want to thank Councillor King for his leadership and those in the community for coming to a consensus on this name. My question is to staff, and that is, I want to ensure that we are documenting the work that has gone in to rename this street, so that in the future, if people who were not connected to this process, who do not know the history of Commanda Way, and they contact the city will be able to provide people as part of an education piece, the background. I do a lot of research on streets in my ward. Some streets are 75 to 80 years old, and there is not a lot of information that we can get from the city. And I think it's very important to not forget why Commanda Way is being named, the strong history behind that. And I think it's one thing for us to name it, but we also have to carry on with educating future generations when people call into the city and ask for that background, that we have some sort of depository, the history of street names that we can provide them. So I'd just like to ask staff, do we do that now? I understand it's hard to go back in the future and do that research, but as subdivisions get built, as streets get renamed, does the city record this type of information?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll take a shot at this, and Mr. O'Connor may wish to supplement it. I don't think there's a formal business process that describes what you are talking about in this situation, but under the exceptional situation, I'm willing to, since Building Code Services administers street naming and renaming processes, I think we can get heritage staff to work with Building Code Services staff to work with city archives to put something in the city's records related to this particular situation. And Mr. O'Connor may have more to say about that because his group administers the city archives, but that's probably the most appropriate path forward if that's what counts.
Yeah, just Councillor, sorry, I've just been informed, I apologize. It used to be the clerk's office. It's now Dan Chenier's office for the commemorative naming policy. So for Councillor Fleury, you're best to talk with General Manager Chenier. And for new street names, I believe, Mr. Willis, that's your responsibility. So there's a division there between the two.
And Mr. Mayor, it's Dan Chenier. I can advise, and this will perhaps touch on Councillor Fleury's inquiry, and the subsequent one, that we are working on a commemoration policy to refresh the commemoration policy and to look at a broader look beyond just commemorative naming. And certainly one of the things that's been top of mind is the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations, as well as opportunities to create some of the lasting meaning to those names. So the new policy that we're working on can certainly address those, and I believe we'll be coming forward to council for approval of that later in 2021.
So can I just ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
The initiative has been led by Councillor King. I'm going through a process now in my ward that I am leading. To Mr. Chenier, will part of your review have a trigger mechanism so that if there's a street name that meets certain criteria that is no longer warrants the special status of having a street named after it, that it triggers at least a review for the city to consider whether or not it wants to rename a street? Again, Councillor King has gone through this, all right? He's been led by his community, but we, as a corporation, should have a mechanism where certain streets get reviewed, certain things happen in the future.
Mr. Mayor, yes, this is an area we're looking at, and we're looking at best practices because, as you know, in recent times, the removal of names and replacement of names has become a more current and subject of discussion. So we're looking at how other jurisdictions do this, and we will address that in the policy. I can't give you specifically what the direction we will recommend on that, and we may even give council some choices in that respect. So yes, this is an aspect we're looking at.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So on Councillor King's motion, seconded by Councillor Harder. Carried. Adopté. Merci. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Motion exigeant la suspension des règles de procédure. The first one is by Councillor Luloff, seconded by Councillor Eglai, with respect to the extension of the temporary mandatory mask bylaw. Obviously, timely, time-sensitive issue on suspension. Carried. Adopté. Councillor Luloff, it's on the screen for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We are still in the middle of this pandemic. It's very important that we continue to follow our public health guidelines. So I'm not certain whether or not council requires me to read through this, but I do want to point out that there are certainly those who are exempt from this bylaw, and we're calling on people to be kind to those people. So therefore be it resolved that City Council approve that the temporary mandatory mask bylaw as amended remain in effect until 12:01 on April 29th, 2021, unless it is extended by council.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor? Carried? Adopté. Merci. The next item that requires suspension of the rules of procedure is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dudas, with respect to Ottawa Public Health hotel bookings for isolation from the municipal accommodation tax. On suspension, carried?
Carried.
So as colleagues know, the city was one of the first to get permission from the province to introduce a municipal accommodation tax for hotel guests. This replaced the destination marketing fee that was eliminated. And as you know, public health and mostly our social services under the great leadership of Donna and Shelley and Chris and the group over there, they are putting a number of people in hotels and motels to self-isolate because of their circumstances. And we don't believe that we should be paying the accommodation tax to the hotel industry that forwards the money on to Ottawa Tourism. And we have the support of Ottawa Tourism and the hoteliers that they're quite willing to accept this. So I would ask for members' support that we, in essence, exempt ourselves from the municipal accommodation tax for those individuals who are being put up in hotels as a result of COVID-19. So the final resolution is therefore be resolved, the City Council exempt the accommodations purchased by the Ottawa Board of Health from the application of the municipal accommodation tax for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic. Speak to that? No. Carried. Thank you very much. Merci. The next motion requiring suspension is moved by Councillor Kavanaugh and seconded by myself with respect to big box retailers and leveling the playing field. On suspension. Carried. Carried. Councillor Kavanaugh, the floor is yours to introduce the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for seconding this motion. I think we're all concerned about our small businesses throughout the city and what an effect this has been on them with the pandemic. According to the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, 1 in 6 small businesses in danger of closing. These are pretty frightening to think of the jobs that are going to be lost across the country. This could be up to 2.4 million. We need to do our part here. And in Ontario, currently we have rules that are allowing those that sell groceries and essential items to stay open. However, they have a lot of other items as well. And this is very difficult for those who do not have groceries that they're selling. And they're very much put at a disadvantage. So I'll read you out the motion. Be it resolved that the council suspend the rules. Whereas on January 12th, 2021, the province of Ontario issued a stay-at-home order for all Ontario, which came into force on January 14th, 2021, and prohibits residents from leaving their place of residence except for essential activities, including but not limited to shopping for essential items. And whereas the province has not defined what is considered an essential item so as not to limit access by residents to goods that may legitimately be necessary for their health, well-being, and safety. Whereas the province allowed discount stores, big box retailers that sell groceries to remain open, so long as the members of the public are able to maintain the physical distancing of 2 meters physical from other persons in the business or facility, and the number of persons occupying any place of business that is open to the public does not exceed 25% of capacity at any one time, whereas allowing discount stores and big box retailers to remain open while offering non-essential products along with those considered essential, encourages residents to travel outside their home, increases the number of contacts a person may have. And whereas the purpose of these orders is to keep residents at home as much as possible to stop the spread of COVID-19, prevent the hospital system from becoming overwhelmed, and protect vulnerable populations and those who care for them. And whereas allowing discount stores and big box retailers that sell groceries to continue to sell items that are not deemed essential creates an unlevel playing field with our small business community who are required to close or significantly restrict their services. Whereas OCOBIA Chair Mark Kaluski sent a letter to Premier Ford on January 19th requesting fairness in all retail outlets. Excuse me. And regarding the sale of non-essential items. And whereas the City of Ottawa has committed to supporting Ottawa's small business community throughout this pandemic. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Watson, on behalf of City Council, write to the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Minister of Health, to request that the Government of Ontario immediately require that discount stores and big box retailers limit in-person sales to groceries and essential items only, restrict the sale of non-essential items by cording off sale areas displaying non-essential items, only sell non-essential items via sales or curbside pickup. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm thank Councillor Kavanaugh very much for the motion, and obviously I support it. I'm seconding it. This is an issue that has been bubbling for some time, as you know. I apologize. There are other speakers. I'll save my comments. Councillor Brockington, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, for seconding this, and Councillor Kavanaugh for the motion. I agree it's about fairness. We've seen significant restrictions on businesses across our province and our city, and small business owners are frustrated that they sell similar goods that they see in the big box stores being sold. And that's not right. I would prefer the motion be written that says, let's pressure the provincial government on reopening, not closing more in this city, but reopening. We're safe to do so, where there can be more restrictions on capacity in these stores. But I really do think the focus should be on reopening and not closing more. I'm troubled that there's no definition of what an essential item is. We can agree food, medicine, those types of things. But what about clothing and footwear? What about recreational products that parents need for their kids for spending more time outside? What about books? These are all things that in all of our wards businesses are being sold but are closed in our small businesses, yet the big box stores get away with selling these items. Sure, there are some items that people don't need now that they're still available, and I get that equity issue. But I struggle because I think we should be focusing on how do we work with public health and the province on the slow reopening of our small businesses, not putting more closures in place. So that troubles me. There are also going to be jobs lost. This will add to job losses in the city, because if you're going to close down sections of these stores, they won't need as many employees. They won't need as many cashiers. They won't need as many inventory stock people. They won't need as many deliveries. So we have to think about that as well. I'm very concerned about the equity and fairness, and the small business associations and owners have every right to be upset about their lack of availability to their customers. But I really want to emphasize that my concern is how we can open businesses safely in this city. And this motion doesn't address that. It talks about closing more. So I think we have to raise the equity issue with the province, and that this is not fair and it's not right. But how do we develop a plan to open Ontario's and Ottawa's small businesses? That's what I want to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gower, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To build on Councillor Brockington's comments, I'll be supporting this motion because I think it's the right message to send. But I do have concerns, and I think we need to think about equity on this. As an example, if my child's boots fall apart, I can very easily log on to my internet and use my credit card to purchase a new pair of boots. I know there are people in our community who wouldn't be able to do that. And that definition of what is essential or what is not essential is very unclear. And I can sympathize or empathize with folks in our community who might not have access to the internet to order something online where the rest of us do. You know, public libraries, apps are closed where people normally access the internet. It's just not possible. And we don't know how long this shutdown will last. And if this is something that goes many weeks or many months where non-essential items are not available other than through the internet, that could be a problem here. So I do agree with Councillor Brockington that we should also be pushing for businesses to be allowed to open safely. If if Costco can open with 25% capacity and proper 2-meter physical distancing, I think a local store should be able to open safely as well with the same rules. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too share the concerns of Councillor Gower and Councillor Brockington. I had a message from a woman in the city that told me that she, generally speaking, buys her children's second clothing in secondhand stores because kids grow out of their clothing really quickly, and it's very expensive. But of course, those stores are now closed down. If you don't have a credit card, which many of our lower income residents probably don't, you can't buy these, what I would deem to be essential items for children, online. And so there is an inequity, but there's also a problem. And to my way of thinking, what Councillor Brockington has enunciated is quite correct. In our city, if we use good social distancing protocols and all the protocols that public health have put in place, then we should be encouraging more businesses to open, not shutting down what some could deem essential. And it gets back to the question of what is essential. Is our children's clothing essential? Our outdoor equipment for outdoor play, sleds, all of those things, is that essential or non-essential? And who's going to decide? And in my mind, I think that we have to really think this through, and we have to think about what direction would be the best for our city. And I think for our small businesses, getting those doors back open, as long as we use good social protocols, makes the most sense. So actually closing more, I think, is the wrong direction. And I think that we should maybe consider changing this motion to encourage good social protocols, but opening up our local economy. Thank you.
Councillor Alshantiri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think we all know this file is close to my heart. And Mr. Mayor, we worked so hard with you, staff, and asked the small businesses to do all the necessary steps to make sure their customers safe, their staff is safe, and it is a provincial order to shut down. But I mean, Mr. Mayor, if you are going to ask the province, I would recommend, I would add my voice to Councillor Brockington. We should ask the province to allow small business to open more and be safe. Today, Mr. Mayor, I stopped at a small drugstore in my community, and they have a sign, 5 people inside only, because the store is limited space. And they manage that, and is in the middle of the small village, and people follow the rules. They stand outside for a couple of minutes and one go in. And I don't understand why we don't use that model with the small businesses. Even, the province keeps saying, oh, we want to reduce the number, the larger store, but we don't open the small store. And I have to tell you, a lot of people in the rural area, Mr. Mayor, they don't get the delivery because they are far away from suburban or urban. And that's if they have a credit card. But some of our older adults don't have credit card and they don't feel comfortable using credit card over the phone. And I think that's something, Mr. Mayor, time for us to start. I'm not saying you can't force that on a province, but I think we need to ask the province to start thinking about reopening, not closing. But and if there's something you need from us as a direction to the mayor or a request to the mayor to speak to the premier, I'll be happy to move something. I'm sure Council Brockman will be happy to move something as well. So we are in your hand, and I just want you to know. At the conference a couple of days ago, many of the small community of Ontario asked the Premier the same thing. So you will not be the only voice asking for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just like to take this opportunity to reiterate what my council colleagues are saying. We heard Dr. Etches say yesterday that our numbers are down. And just to speak from experience, I've been in a lot of our local stores, they're small outlets, and quite frankly, I find that their COVID protocols are much stronger than what they are in the big box stores. I admit I have been to Costco, and it's like, even with the new enforcement that they're doing for COVID, I find that there's still a lot of a lot of jostling, too many people in there, but you don't find that in the local stores. We have local companies like little mom and pop shops here in the Manotick area and in Riverside South. They are suffering. We cannot afford to lose these businesses. We cannot. They're doing everything right. And they will bend that even more backwards, even more, if it means that they can open. So please, I ask you, please ask the province to allow our small businesses to open. Well, I understand the intent of this motion from you and Councillor Kavanagh. I think the best thing to do is to allow our small businesses to do what they do, and that is serve our public. And that's basically what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hubley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask if it could be considered as a friendly amendment or something we need to look into. The one thing I'm hearing over and over from small businesses in my area that rely on a delivery service is that they think they're being taken advantage of because that's the only way they can deliver their goods or their food, whatever it is, by the companies that are basically the only delivery services in town. I hate to name names, but like Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, along those lines, they're overcharging a lot of the restaurants and taking most of their profit on what they're providing to try to keep afloat. I'd like to see the province talk about, or maybe we can do it as a municipality, some way of regulating what these international companies are doing to our local economy. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Mr. Mayor, from staff.
Who in staff would like to comment? I don't know if someone has a mic on. Councillor Hubley, who specifically at staff would you like to address this?
Well, I guess bylaw would probably be the ones that would have to enforce it, but I'm not sure if we want to do the regulation or do we want the province to do the regulation, because really it's not unique to Ottawa. It's something that's happening everywhere.
Mr. DeMonte?
Yes, Mayor, maybe I can address the first part of the question. Councillor was right. From an enforcement perspective, we'd enforce. I know in similar circumstances when we did explore, there were limits to the municipality's capability to pass bylaws in these areas, namely your motion with regards to Costco right now. That's why it's going to the province. We would have liked to have done that municipally, but we can't. I don't know if this is better answered or explored. Perhaps, Councillor, we can explore that with our legal team to get you a more definitive answer.
I'm good with that, Mr. Mayor. If you are, that we'll, instead of doing as part of your motion, we'll try to bring something at a future meeting if we can move quickly on this to help our small businesses.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Kavanagh, you'll wrap up the debate, so we'll go to Councillor Harder now.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak to this. I absolutely agree with the motion, but I absolutely agree with what everyone else has been saying. A lot of people are saying, well, the province came down last weekend and checked on all the stores they're allowing to make extraordinary high profits in this year where so many have suffered so terribly. And, you'd have to be pretty damn dumb not to make sure that your rules are being watched in any of these stores that were reviewed when you knew that there was an open invitation telling you that this team was coming from Toronto. Is there any way that the recommendations that many colleagues have been making can be incorporated into this motion? I don't think that we want to wait for 2 weeks. I really am very proud of what our Chief Medical Officer of Health, her position on schools, her position on how we can manage, on your position, Mr. Mayor. You've been strong in the last week in particular on, the fairness factor. And that's what we're talking about now. In Barrhaven, Kitty Cobbler's closed forever. It's been here. It's an original store that opened in the early 2000s, maybe 2001 or 2. Same owners all this time. They are not going to be able to reopen, so they're closing. And there's lots of people that are sad, but for heaven's sakes, they certainly could have managed in their store to have 3 or 4 people in at a time. And it would be much easier to do than to control, 1,000, 1,500. So is there any way that can happen with the motion that you're putting before us today?
Yeah, I've got, I think people have raised a very good point, and Councillor Kavanagh, I know it's your motion. I'm just going to suggest to see if you consider it friendly, and I believe it may address the issues that other members of council brought forward, that we indicate, therefore be it resolved that Mayor Watts, on behalf of City Council, write to the Premier and the Ontario Minister of Health to request that the Government of Ontario immediately, and then adding in, apply the same rules to small businesses that big boxes must adhere to, comma, and if this does not happen, that then we come back and say that the Government of Ontario immediately require discount stores and big box retailers to do 1, 2, and 3. So in essence, what it does is let's level the playing field. Instead of closing more, we open up a little bit so they follow the same 25% rule and so on. And if they're not prepared to do that because of COVID and their concerns, then our next request is exactly as Councillor Kavanagh has put forward, the 3 points. So Councillor Kavanagh, would you consider that a friendly amendment that I think addresses the concerns that some members of council brought forward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I understand the concerns, and I appreciate the example that Councillor Harder raised about Kitty Cobbler when we're talking about kids' shoes. All of a sudden, only Walmart can sell shoes. No, it's actually been in small businesses that are now going under. That's our concern. And we didn't want this lockdown. Lockdowns are pretty hard. What we're finding, though, is because there's a lockdown, and I think that Ottawa Public Health would have some, concerns about opening more, is just the scale. So if we can go along with something that we're saying that the 25% rule is in effect the same as a box store, perhaps that can address it, and the province can look at that, and I'm sure that Councillor Brocken can talk to his colleagues at AMO on that as well. But that would be what we're looking at, because we're talking about them being allowed. And defining essential, it's already being twisted around in terms of what different jurisdictions think of as essential. We've got Manitoba and Quebec doing it. Over in the UK is also had to look at that. Children's clothing, whatever. As far as secondhand clothing, I think that's problematic right now at the moment. But if we look at the percentage of square footage and have it so that it's a level playing field, it would still mean people are going for what they need. Currently, by the way, essential is sporting equipment, i.e. bikes, are considered essential. So those stores are open. But we need to keep it so that we're still discouraging just shopping for anything beyond what you absolutely need. So yes, we can look at that.
Okay, so just I'm just reading it here off my notes. So it would be the friendly amendment would be that therefore be it resolved that Mayor Watson, on behalf of the City Council, write to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Health to request that the Government of Ontario immediately allow or immediately apply the same rules to small businesses that big boxes must adhere to, and if they do not concur, then, and I'll read it, the same resolution, then be it therefore resolved that Mayor Watson, on behalf of City Council, write to the Premier of Ontario and Ontario Minister of Health to request the Government of Ontario immediately require the discount stores and big box retailers, and then it's the same 1, 2, and 3. So we have some people that would like to speak to this. Councillor, I believe Egli is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking for that clarity because in my role as chair, I'm likely going to have to liaise back with the board and Dr. Etches, I also don't want council to supplant the work that the board is doing and that Dr. Etches. So I'm just wondering, just a small suggestion for the wording is. Something along the lines, to apply the same rules, keeping in mind or being aware of, the COVID considerations or something along those lines to take into account that it's not just do it, but do it, as Dr. Etches would say, as safely as can be done. So I'm not sure what the word piece is there, but or in conjunction with public health or something along those lines.
I think Councillor Kavanaugh, you'd be amenable to that second friendly amendment.
I actually think that's essential. I'm on the board as well, and I think that we that's the whole point of this, isn't it? We're here to keep people safe, and that is absolutely necessary to say.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with the arguments that we've heard, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. I just want to point out that Caitlin has very quickly inserted in consultation with public health authorities.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Councillor and Mr. Mayor. I think that a very valid argument has been raised around the equity piece. And the ability of people who don't necessarily have credit cards or internet to be able to access necessary items for themselves or for their families. So I think it's a discussion that we need to have, but again, we need to have it within the public health considerations. So thank you, everybody, for agreeing to that particular amendment.
Okay. I did see Councillor Luloff. Do you still have a point, Councillor? No?
No, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry? You're okay?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. So Councillor Kavanaugh, if you want to wrap up, then we have the amended friendly amendments motion. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And just very quickly, we can't lose sight of the fact that this whole lockdown is about our health. And we're not trying to change anything about that. We're just trying to make a level playing field so that we're not hurting our small business at the same time while others are profiting from it and with the free reign because the others cannot open. That is the problem. And I think the Canadian Federation of Independent Business will agree with that is the concern. So I appreciate the input of my colleagues. And you're on the same page, and particularly Councillor Egli, that we cannot leave out the fact that this is the public health's call, and always is, because that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, colleagues, and thanks, Councillor Kavanaugh, for the initiative of the motion, which obviously I very much support, and I appreciate your willingness to address the concern that a number of colleagues raised as well. And thank you to Councillor Egli for your insistence that we ensure that public health obviously has a say in this. I get a lot of feedback from people, particularly small business people. I think of, for instance, a great little sound system stereo store in the Glebe, just at Bank and Glebe, that's been around for 30 years. They can't allow anyone to go in and browse, listen to their sound, listen to the beautiful sound that comes out of some of those sound systems. But Costco and Walmart can. And it's just patently unfair that these big multinational organizations have the ability to, in essence, skirt the rules because they sell groceries. That's the only reason they're open, folks, is because they have a produce department and they sell meat and steaks and vegetables and so on. And they're getting under, I think the intent of an essential business was by selling those products and then continuing to sell, everything from sporting equipment to clothes and so on. So ideally, because we are trending generally in the right direction. Some days we're up, some days we're down. We had a very good day yesterday. Our numbers are up today. But generally, I think we're certainly doing better than any other large city in Ontario. And we would like to thank the BIAs and Mark Kowalski for the letter he sent to the Premier that initiated this particular resolution, because they really are our main streets. They're struggling and fighting to survive with new innovative ways to deliver curbside pickups and online orders. So I appreciate all of the sentiments, because obviously this is a challenging time, particularly for the small business community. And if we can do anything to convince the province to allow in a safe way the small businesses to follow the same rules as the big box stores, then that's great. But our backup position is, if you don't allow that, then you should ensure that the big box stores are not at an unfair advantage towards our small businesses on our main streets. So on the motion, carried.
Carried.
Adopté. Merci.
Okay.
Councillor Kavanagh again for that. The next motion is by Councillor El Shantiri, seconded by myself, with respect to the Winter City Grant Program that I referred to in the State of the City address. On suspension of the rules.
Carried.
Carried. Councillor El Shantiri, if you'd like to introduce the motion, please.
Just waiting for staff to put the motion on the screen, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, here it comes.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, Mr. Mayor, for seconding this motion, and I think you mentioned it and you explained it very properly in your address this morning. And Mr. Mayor, I don't need to read the whole whereas. If we can just go to the be it resolved. I think the motion is here. Be it resolved that Council approved that $50,000 be added to expand the Winter City Grant Program to support additional projects from application already received, with additional funds allocated from the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Account within the existing 2021 Plan and Infrastructure and Economic Development budget. So, Mr. Mayor, as you said earlier, we had put some funding before, but now we see there's more applicant, and those BIAs, I think they're all across the city. They can definitely use our support and additional support, and I'm asking my colleague for that additional support, and the fund is coming from the COVID-19 economic recovery. So I would leave it that way, and I hope my colleague would see the need and to support this motion.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor, again, and for your leadership on all things small business. We really appreciate that and the work that you and other colleagues do. So on the motion, please. Carried. Adopté.
Carried.
Thank you. The next motion requiring suspension of the rules is Councillor Luloff, seconded by Councillor Harder, with respect to a joint meeting to deal with, I believe this is the short-term rental accommodation Airbnb issue. So on suspension, carried. Councillor Luloff, do you want to bring this forward? I think there may be a change in date, if I'm not mistaken.
There has been, Mr. Mayor. It's being left open-ended, so that staff can work through a couple of minor legal issues. If the clerk wouldn't mind placing the new motion up on the screen. Thank you very much. I think the be it resolved is up at the top there for. Okay, well. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, please. So essentially, in order to deal with this this bylaw, we need to hold a joint meeting of planning and CPSC. So therefore, be it resolved that the council delegate authority to a joint planning committee and community protective services committee meeting and consider the short-term rental reports, both from PIDE and EPS, and be it further resolved that the joint planning committee and community and protective services committee meeting be designated as a public meeting for the purposes of the Planning Act. Notice of this meeting will go out when we are able to hold it, and I would ask that my council colleagues please support this.
Okay, no one wishes to speak on it. So on the motion, carried. Adopté. Thank you. Next is Fleury King motion, redemolition control at 256 Denis Street. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Kitts Harder motion, resolution to authorize application for minor variance to the Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Kitts, the floor is yours. I think this is your first motion dealing with the Committee of Adjustment. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't read the entire thing here, but whereas the Planning Act restricts an applicant from requesting a minor variance prior to the second anniversary of the day on which a bylaw for the subject lands was amended without the approval of council, and whereas planning staff have reviewed the application and have no concerns with the request for minor variance, therefore be it resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended to permit the introduction of the following motion. I'll skip ahead a bit here. Whereas planning staff have no concerns with the submission of an application for minor variance to the Committee of Adjustment in respect of Block 85 on Planning 4M-1665 being the Avalon Aquaview subdivision in Ward 19. Therefore, be it resolved that an application for minor variance in respect of Block 85 on Plan 4M-1665 seeking a reduced corner side yard setback is permitted to be brought before the Committee of Adjustment in advance of September 11th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. So on, I don't think we suspended the rules. On suspension, carried. On the motion as presented by Councillor Kitts, seconded by Councillor Harder, carried. Thank you. Now we have the Fleury King motion with respect to demolition control at 256 St. Denis Street. On suspension of the rules, carried. Councillor Fleury, the floor is yours, seconded by Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if the clerk could put it on the screen. Pretty straightforward. We've done this many times as we want to advance demolition for a vacant property. So I can maybe move to the therefore be resolved that council approve.
It goes pretty light, so we don't need to.
Okay. That's all I was thinking.
So I think someone's mic is on. We're hearing your conversation. Thank you.
So therefore be resolved that council approve demolition control for the existing building on the property subject to the following conditions. One, that until the time of the construction of the first replacement building, the registered owner shall landscape the property to the satisfaction of the general manager of planning, infrastructure, and economic development. That registered owner shall prohibit the use of the property for other interim uses and maintain the property in accordance to the property standards bylaw. And two, the landscaping of the property shall be finalized in collaboration with the city staff. So this is TIF. Oh, sorry. 3, that the owner shall pay for 100% securities to the city and the value of landscaping the property, with the securities to be released once these works are completed. 4, the owner agrees that the discretion of the general manager, planning, infrastructure, and economic development department, a replacement building must be substantially completed within 5 years from the date of the approval. In default thereof, the city clerk shall enter in a collector's roll to the sum of $5,000 for the residential dwelling to be demolished. 5, the registered owner shall enter in an agreement with the city of Ottawa to include the foregoing conditions and pay all costs associated with the registration of said agreement at such time as the building permit is issued to redevelop the site and the replacement buildings in its place. the agreement will become null and void and will be released upon request of the owner. The owner shall pay all costs associated with the release of the agreement. Almost there, the owner, number 6, that the owner agrees that the demolition permit will not be issued and the building cannot be demolished until such time as the agreement referenced herein has been executed and registered on title. And 7, that this approval be considered null and void if the agreement is not executed within the next 6 months of council approval.
Okay, thank you. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions on the motion?
Any questions?
Adopté. Thank you. Next is a motion by myself, seconded by Councillor Luloff, with respect to Provincial Social Services Relief Fund. And Councillor Luloff, as we know, is the new chair of CPS that has this responsibility, and he's seconding the motion. On suspension, carried. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just give you a synopsis, as I did in the State of the City address. There are 4 projects that meet the objectives and their timetables. St. Luke's Table at 760 Somerset Street West, $150,000 towards the renovation of the existing day program space at St. Luke's Anglican Church to create 3 new showers, a laundry facility, and the relocation of washrooms in order to address a critical service gap, which has been exacerbated by the increase in unsheltered homelessness resulting from the pandemic. Item 2, Ottawa Mission, 92 Florence, $700,000 towards the purchase of a full renovation to the interior of the existing rooming house, 8 units, including new and upgraded plumbing, electrical, and windows. Item 3, Ottawa Community Housing, 3380 Jockville Road, $4 million, which amount will supplement the Rapid Housing Initiative funding earmark for the project to maximize the investment on the site for the creation of a modular housing for low-income families, 32 units. And D, up to $6.5 million for a 4th capital project in Ward 16, currently being negotiated. That's why it's confidential, the location at this time, except it is in Ward 16, which will serve to preserve existing affordable supportive housing stock, 50-plus beds, and make modifications to better meet physical distancing goals. And then it goes on, the whereases are all the directions to staff in order to fulfill the obligation by both the province and the federal government that we will commit to having these projects completed in the time frame request or demanded by the province. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I think Councillor Fleury, do you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Questions, Councillor Fleury.
Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Donna and team for the work. I have a question as it relates to OCH. As you know, OCH is a key partner of the city, and certainly looking forward to the execution of Jockville as it relates to family units. There is some uncertainty as it relates to the affordability ranges of those units once OCH build them. So I'm just looking for clarity from the city as it's family units, residents that are newcomers are coming out of the family shelter. So the affordability ranges are very important, and OCH wants to make sure that we respect the Rapid Housing Initiative framework. So just maybe a comment on that from staff.
Donna Gray, I believe, or Shelley or Chris?
Yeah, I'll ask Shelley to speak to the affordability ranges of those particular projects. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, in response to your question, there are specific requirements under the RHI around affordability, and it's that no tenant should be paying more than 30% of their income on their rental costs. So we'll work with Ottawa Community Housing to move families in and negotiate the rents based on their income source at that time.
So just to clarify, this will be additional rent geared to income? Like which program are we leveraging for those units, just so I can relay that back?
Well, the thing under the RHI funding is that we're actually fully covering the costs of both the hard and soft construction costs. So we'll be able to have it operate like RGI housing, but we won't have to layer in, additional housing supplements based on the depth of affordability that we create through the funding that we provide.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councillor Luloff, please. Second the motion.
Very briefly on wrap up here, Mr. Mayor, I just want to recognize Councillor McKinney's tireless work on housing and homelessness in the city and her advocacy over the years. And also thank Shelley Van Buskirk and Donna Gray for their hard work on this. I know it took quite a bit of effort to identify these sites and some innovation for sure, finding other sites that could be declared surplus and handed over to OCH. Thank you very much for your tireless work on this. Appreciate it.
Right, well said. Thank you. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres commentaires? So
Any other comments?
Carried. Are there any other motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure? Il y a des autres motions exigeant la suspension des règles de procédure? No. Okay. Notice is a motion for consideration of subsequent meeting. Avis de motion par examen réunion subséquente. Councillor McKenney, seconded by Councillor Leeper, with respect to 494 Lisgar Street demolition. Councillor McKenney, please. And Happy New Year. I think your mic's off. Catherine, you're muted. You're still muted. There we go.
I'm back. Right. Sorry about that. The notice of motion is actually for 131 Balsam.
I have that next. You've got two of them.
Oh, I have two. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Can I get that up on the screen then? I don't have it in front of me.
Sure. It's 494 Lisgar Street. There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Mayor, actually, that one we had pulled from this agenda in some discussion with the applicant for the housing. They wanted to have a meeting with residents ahead of time. So that was where my confusion was. So we're not doing that notice of motion today.
Okay, so we'll take that one off and then we'll go back to you for 131 Balsam Street.
Thank you. Now we've got it. Same thing, it's just demolition control, 131 Balsam. There was a fire at this location. It's owned by the same owner as Preston Hardware. And it's just to allow for demolition control given its advanced state of disrepair.
Okay, so we'll deal with that at our next meeting. Thank you, Councillor McKenney. Next is Councillor Brockington and Kavanaugh with respect to tobogganing.
Thank you, Mayor. You may be adverse to snowmobiling, but hopefully I can get you on a toboggan soon. This is regarding the hill at Mooney's Bay. Staff, as colleagues may be aware, closed the hill for public use. Staff cite a number of safety issues on the hill, both related to COVID restrictions and other matters that were raised as part of a 2017 safety audit. This notice of motion, which I'm not going to read, just basically asks staff to go back, assess, identify, and help mitigate those safety issues to the satisfaction of the GM of Parks, Rec, and Culture in the order with the intent that the hill gets reopened. So this is a very valuable asset. We've been talking about citywide assets. Yes, Mooney's Bay Hill and Mooney's Bay Park is located in River Ward, but people from across the city come and visit the park and the hill. It's a four-season park, and certainly there is a very strong desire to see this reopened. So I'm committed to working with staff to address these issues and get this part of the park reopened. So this is a notice of motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kavanaugh, we don't debate notices of motion unless you have a point of order.
No, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other notices of motion for consideration of subsequent meeting? Est-ce qu'il y a des autres motions? None? Okay, motion to introduce bylaws, motion portant présentation de règlement. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Meehan, that the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws 3 readings be read and passed, with the exception of the bylaw listed as bylaw UU, a bylaw of the City of Ottawa to amend bylaw number 2008-250 to temporarily change the zoning of the lands known municipally as 114 Richmond Road, as the associated item has been deferred, and that the following bylaw be read and passed in accordance with the motion approved at today's meeting, a bylaw of the City of Ottawa to amend bylaw number 2020-186 respecting expiry of the temporary mandatory mask bylaw.
On the motion, carried. Adopté. Confirmation bylaw, règlement de ratification, conseillère Deans, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Meehan, that the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of January 27th, 2021.
Carried. Adopté. Madam Deputy Clerk, are there any inquiries? No. Councillor Deans?
Thank you,
Adjournment.
Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Meehan, that the proceedings of the City Council meeting of January 27th, 2021 be adjourned.
Carried. Adopté. And thank you all very much. The media availability for staff and myself will take place along with Councillor Eglai at 1:20 in 15 minutes. On va commencer la conférence de presse dans 20 minutes. Ou 15 minutes, excusez-moi, à 1h20.
It will start in 15 minutes at 1:20.